This conference will now be recorded.
If you did not get the audio message there, this meeting is now in session and is being recorded. So if you are not okay with being recorded in this meeting, then
Can't hear anybody talking.
this would be the time. Hi, Blaine. Welcome. You're being recorded. So March 8th, Oregon Invasive Species Council meeting. Welcome to anybody from the public who may be in attendance. We will have a public comment period at the end of this meeting. We'll start with some introductions, and maybe I can just go around the room, okay, and call people out as I see them on my screen. My name is Troy Abercrombie. I'm the coordinator of the Western Invasives Network. Sit as a member of the council representing the network and the North Coast partners in particular, currently serving as the chair of the council. Glad to see you all. Thanks for making the time. Patrick.
Good afternoon, Patrick Singh. I'm your new OISC coordinator as of pretty much this meeting. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Patrick. Nikki.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki Brooks, an agriculture specialist with Customs and Border Protection. I'm happy to see you all today.
Nice to see you too, Nikki. Thank you. And Christine.
Hi, Christine Moffett, representing the Friends of South Slough Reserve on the South Coast in Coos Bay. And I am the co-chair of this illustrious group.
Thank you, Christine. Nice to see you. Mr. Rick Boatner, you are next on my screen.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Boatner, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Good to see you, Rick. Chuck, you're next.
Right on. I'm Chuck Fisk. I have my own company, F5 Wildlife Control, and I'm representing 5 counties, and I'm appointed member for private interests.
Thank you, Chuck. Noel Batchelor.
Hi, everyone. Noel Batchelor, Oregon State Parks ecologist.
Thanks, Noel. Alicia Gibbons, you're next on my screen.
Hi, is my camera or is my mic working?
It is.
Okay, I work with Patrick at Public Affairs Council.
Thank you for being here. Wyatt Williams, you're next on the screen.
Hi, everyone. Wyatt Williams, Invasive Species Specialist from Oregon Department of Forestry.
Thank you, Wyatt. Jolene Littlejohn, you are next on the screen.
Hi, everyone. I am Jolene Littlejohn with Samara Group. I'm listening in and will be able to support a couple of the presentations today.
Thank you, Jolene. Josh Emerson.
Hey, everybody. Josh Emerson, representing the Department of Environmental Quality.
Thank you, Josh. Jen Poirier, you are next on my screen.
Hey everyone, Jen Poirier with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm the alternate Fish and Wildlife Service person. Brendan White is our primary, and he is out at the Urban Ecology Symposium today, so glad to be here.
Thank you, Jen. Chris Benneman, you are next.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Benneman, representative for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. I am your state plant regulatory official for the state of Oregon and acting position. I need to make that clear. I am in an acting position as well for the director of the Plant Protection Conservation Program area. Nice to see everyone. And welcome Samara Group, Patrick and Alicia. It's nice to see you guys on board.
Thank you, Chris. Sarah Callahan, you are next on my screen.
Hey there, I'm Sarah Callahan. I serve as the botanist and invasive plant coordinator in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. And probably for the last 5 or 6 years, my participation waxed and waned. So happy to be here today, listening.
Thank you, Sarah. If you've been monitoring the chat at all, then you will have heard about our next guest, Shauna Batista. You are next on the list.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for all the well wishes in the chat, everybody. Shauna Bautista, I'm the invasive plant pesticide use coordinator for the Forest Service for the region covering Oregon and Washington, and a longtime member contributor to OISC, and happy to see all the new faces and the familiar ones as well. So just keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Shauna. You will be sorely missed, but thank you for being here one last time. Will Lackey, you are next on my screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Will Lackey. I'm with the Oregon Department of Transportation, the statewide vegetation management coordinator.
Nice to see you, Will. I have two cats on my screen, but let's go with the first one.
They're both me. I have to leave in, I don't know, an hour, and we'll switch over shortly to phone by then, but didn't know how to do that, so wanted to figure it out now. Anyway, hi everybody, sorry for that preamble. I'm Kat Rivera with Portland State University, and including the Center for Lakes and Reservoirs.
Thanks, Kat. I actually have three cats. I didn't even see the video one, so there are lots of cats in here. If there's a second cat, we can go with that now. Hearing none, Sarah Wilson, you are next on my screen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Wilson. I work for the Port of Portland in the Natural Resources Department.
Thank you, Sarah. Cheryl Shippentauer, you are next.
Good afternoon. This is Cheryl Shippentauer with the Umatilla Tribes. I'm a restoration ecologist.
Thank you, Cheryl. Nice to have you here. One of our newest council members, Katie Murray, you are next.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm Katie Murray with Oregonians for Food and Shelter. I think I'm a public member, so appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm skipping you, Kat. You already went. Matt Paralek. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Thanks. Troy, I've heard a lot worse pronunciation, so that's fine. Matt Parolek, natural resource ecologist with the Port of Portland.
Thank you. Yeah, I was close. Sam Chan, you are next on my screen.
Hey, hello everyone. Sam Chan, Oregon State University, and also with the Sea Grant Extension Service. It's good to hear all our new colleagues from the Port of Portland and ODOT, and thank you for letting us know that Shauna is actually going to be enjoying her new chapter. Oh, and also Oregonians of Food and Shelter. It's nice to see all these new representations.
Indeed it is, Sam. Thank you. Karen Ripley, you are next.
Good afternoon. Karen Ripley. I'm a forest entomologist and I coordinate forest health monitoring for the U.S. Forest Service. And I'm the official representative on OISC, but I sure support the work that Shauna's done over the years and Sarah contributes regularly too.
Thank you, Karen. Glenn Dolphin, you are next.
Yeah, hi everybody. Glenn Dolphin here representing the Oregon State Marine Board. Nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you, Glenn. Blaine Parker, you are next.
Good afternoon. Blaine Parker with Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, Invasive Species Coordinator.
Thank you, Blaine. Alex Staunch.
Hello, I'm Alex Staunch with Mosaic Ecology, a natural resource scientist.
Thank you, Alex. Heidi McMaster, you are next on my list.
Heidi McMaster, and I am with the Bureau of Reclamation, Columbia Pacific Northwest region, and I am the IPM coordinator and quagga mussel coordinator.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And last but certainly not least, Dominic Mays. You are the last on my list.
Uh-oh, wasn't sure you're gonna call me. I'm Dominic. I used to be on the OISC. I
wanted to see today's meeting. Here I am. I like to call myself a biologist, but I just do boring policy stuff mostly now. So it's great to be here, seeing the new faces, and of course, Shauna, it's great to see you too, and all these old friends of mine. I just came over from the Urban Ecology Symposium. It was pretty good. You see my EAB gave a talk on our recent modeling efforts in Portland, modeling water temperature effects from the loss of Oregon ash canopy. So if anybody's interested in that, maybe some other time we'll chat about it. Thanks for calling on me, Troy.
Well, thanks for being here, Dominic. If there was anybody else that did not get called on, I think that was all 28 of us. If you did not get introduced, please introduce yourself. All right. The next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from the January 2022 meeting, excuse me. That's an error on our agenda there, my apologies. So those meeting materials were circulated previously, and so looking for motion and discussion on the last minutes.
I move to approve.
I will. Oh, Chuck, I was going to say.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So who's the second, Chuck or Rick?
I'll give it to Chuck.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll take it.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the January 2022 minutes by Christine. Chuck with a second. Do you have any discussion? Potential edits, additions, omissions?
They are posted on the web in case you have, I don't know whether you wanted to share them, Troy, or not. They're nicely formatted. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a team effort. Thank you so much to Karen Ripley. Thank you to Patrick. Between the combination of the 3 sets of notes, I think we captured everything on there. The action items that came out of that that meeting that were identified, almost every single one of them has either been completed or is in progress, and I'll share an update on that in the days to come. So last opportunity for discussion or suggestions, edits, corrections. Hearing none, please vote in the chat, yay or nay, to approve the minutes as presented. While you're doing that, we do have a couple more attendees that have entered the room, so I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. If you were not notified, this meeting is being recorded, and I'll start with the first one that pops up on my screen, Morgan Gratz-Weiser.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Camera is not yet turning on, but we'll see there. Apologies for being late, but thank you for having me. I'm Morgan Gratz-Weiser. I am the Governor's Natural Resource Policy Advisor, and I am now, I will be covering the work of this body. So thanks for having me.
And thank you so much, Morgan, for making the time today. We are glad to have you on board, that is for sure. The next name on my screen is Erica Edmiston.
Hello, everyone. I hope it's okay if I listen in. I'm Erica Edmiston. I'm actually the education coordinator for the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council. So I just, I'm on your email list and just try to stay up with what's going on in our entire region and just checking in. So thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you, Erica. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you'll get some value out of today's meeting and maybe make some connections. So it looks like the motion to approve the meeting minutes has carried. So we will continue on with the agenda here. Wanted to just carve out a few minutes to welcome our new members to the council. Katie Murray, Oregonians for Food and Shelter, Morgan Gratz-Weiser from the Governor's Natural Resource Office. And since the January meeting, we did get an official appointment on our Senate representative. Senator Lou Frederick has been confirmed by the Senate President as our representative. So looking forward to continued engagement with him and his office. I don't know if they will be here today, but happy to get the appointments of Morgan and Senator Frederick for sure. I do have a couple minutes carved out for you both, considering that Senator is not here at the moment. So Morgan or Katie, if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourselves or what you do, or how you are looking at working with this council. I just wanted to open the floor up for a couple minutes to give you that opportunity to give any kind of background or say a few words.
There we go. Sure, I'm happy to share a little more about myself. As I said, I'm Morgan Gratz-Weiser. I joined the governor's office in November to cover a range of natural resource policy areas, one of which is the Department of Agriculture and agricultural-related activities. And with that comes the Invasive Species Council. So I'm really happy to learn more about the work that you all do and how I can be supportive and a helpful liaison in our office. A little background for me is I've worked most recently doing some legislative affairs for Oregon Environmental Council. And before that, I worked in the state Senate for a few different offices. So I've been more on the legislative and policy side of work. And so, yeah, happy to learn more about everything that's happening here and see how I can best support this work. Thank you, Troy.
And thank you, Morgan. We are very happy to have you. Kate, I don't know if you had anything else. You're certainly not obligated to do so, but if you did want to take a minute to say anything, you can.
Sure. Are you talking to me, Katie? This Katie?
Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I am the Executive Director of Oregonians for Food and Shelter. I started working here in December of 2020. Previous to that, I was in the IPM Center at Oregon State University for about 14 years. So worked with several people in this group here, Noel, Wyatt, Will, on state agency IPM issues, and just have a lot of background around pests and pest management. And with OFS, our board is made up of forestry, ag, applicators. So, a lot of crossover with the issues that this council will be dealing with. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to figuring out how I can be helpful.
Thank you, Katie. I know the council looks forward to hearing your perspective, being able to get things from your perspective and the perspectives of your partners. So we're certainly happy to have you here, and thanks for being here today. We are way ahead of schedule already. Does anybody have anything quick for the good of the order before I move on to the next agenda item? We can just keep it rolling. So the next thing is just a quick update on our legislative concept. As many of you know, through some conversations over the past few months, it became clear that the council was not well covered in the insurance department. And so, and in fact, maybe not at all. And so we've been working with ODA as our fiscal agent and member of the council to go through the process of developing a legislative concept that we can submit for consideration that would allow coverage of the council and the members therein to be covered under the state risk policy in their capacity as council members. So we are just finishing up the kind of the final language, suggestive language. It's not final language. It's more to give a template for the drafters to write proper legal language that captures, the idea behind what we're trying to do. And so be putting the finishing touches on that and submitting it to Chris at ODA for review and consideration. Chris, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, thanks, Troy, and thank you, Catherine, both for your work on that. Just as a recap for where we were with that. So again, that kind of came out of the discussions that the council has been holding over the past, I don't know, a couple of years with the memorandum of understanding. I'll circle back to that in a second. But that was one of the things that came up that was on the council's mind. That was something that really needed to be addressed. So that was the recommendation was to pursue a legislative concept proposal. So again, basically at this stage, it is just that. It is a simple 1 or 2 pager that just kind of outlines what the need is, what this was what the hoped proposal will resolve. In this case, the idea that the council and its members are not fully insured under the policy of ODA as not being direct state employees through the agency, and that being at risk to those members who perhaps have coverage with their own entity that they are associated with, but then those who do not. So a benefit to this is, one, not only does it provide protection for the existing council members, but it also adds assurance. So if we try to expand our membership to other parties or entities that perhaps aren't coming to the table with their own insurances, provide some safety net for those members as well. So it's kind of an extended benefit from this. At the stage right now, so none of these have been reviewed to date. The special session just closed last week. So starting, if not this week, then next week is when the director's office will start to review not only legislative concepts, but another side branch of this, which are what we call POPs, which are policy option packages, which doesn't affect the council, but that's the other task item that will be on the table for the director's office for the next several months. Just a quick timeline. So we work on reviewing those legislative concepts starting, now-ish, with the goal for legislative concepts to be fully reviewed and approved by the director's office prior to moving forward to the governor's office by mid-April. And then at that point, it's in the governor's office's hand to approve, pass forward, and then refine whatever the proposed language is. And I know that was kind of the last point, and with the form that we were looking at is to really define and hone in on the language. And Troy, I know that you proposed a question to Lauren at our director's office about exactly where, what rules we were actually looking to modify. And part of that question that now has been directed to DAS, if the approach is modifying the statute 570 that we were looking at, or if this should be addressed in the direct risk management rule that's overseen by DAS. So those are kind of the two sections in which we could be modifying that language. And so I'm still waiting to hear back on that, but of course, as soon as we do, circle back to you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great background, and yeah, and an important piece on exactly which statute we're gonna edit or amend or where that goes. That's an important piece. So look forward to getting an update on that. And like I said, the official form that goes in has been filled out, and we're just making some final tweaks to that, and that'll get submitted to ODA this week. So that's the update on that.
Troy, I have a follow-up question if I could ask that.
Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Since we are planning on having our first in-person / combined virtual meeting in June, what sort of opportunities might there be for this to be expedited before that event?
I don't
Yeah,
know if
Chris, you
there's an avenue for that to request expedites of the reviews of these, because by then this will be out of the state agency's hands, and I can't, off the top of my head, really recommend on where the process will be at that point come June.
Maybe we can ask Morgan. It looks like she's left the meeting, but I think it will be important in holding our meeting in June.
Morgan's having internet trouble, so she'll be right back.
Okay, yeah, I would suggest that would be more of a question for the directors and the governor's office.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, maybe a quick poll of the room. Would you still attend the meeting as a council member? Would you still attend the meeting in June if this was not resolved?
Could we do like a tally, quick tally?
Well, I don't know. I just
tally
want to, I
in the
mean,
chat
I guess,
box?
you know, and it's okay if someone doesn't want to comment or whatever either. I just, maybe, is there anybody who wouldn't go because this wouldn't be resolved?
Yeah, I think it's an issue also of where you hold those things and of any of the public attendance for that. So I think it's worthy of a conversation with our governor's representative. I think that would be very appropriate.
Yeah, I'm certainly not against any kind of, you know, expeditious handling of any of the council business. But I understand that it may not be a possibility too. So it seems like for the most part, folks would still attend. It wouldn't be any different than any other council meeting has been. You know, not that we were totally aware maybe of what the case was at the time, but nonetheless, it is the same. So I think we'll move forward with June planning as is, but maybe we can get some.
Maybe Troy, if we have a field trip, and we have actually guests or invitees, we might actually have to check with them. And maybe we need to have a waiver form of some type, but I'm just thinking, you know, field trips are probably where we're most vulnerable for liability.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. It's, you know, if we're going down this road and we're starting to look at these kind of things and kind of crossing our T's and stuff on, then that would probably be the next logical, you know, thing to look at, especially if we were ever providing some kind of transport, you know, in a van or something where folks were all together. So I think it's something good to talk about.
Liability you can think of is what if it's over ethical standards. You know, what if I know this sounds crazy, but if somebody is abusive and you know, something like that. I'm sure that's never happened, but I think that's one of those things that have gained more and more prominence recently.
Karen, go ahead.
Well, since this, you know, we're recommending that changes being made to statute, that's not going to be resolved by June. And so we need to be ready that there will not, in my opinion, we need to be ready. There will not be this insurance coverage. And so should, now that we're aware, plan for some kind of waiver of liability for riding in a shared vehicle. You know, just, I don't know if other agency members have experience and have templates that we could use from, but it just seems we should start preparing along with the other logistical needs for that meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I don't know, Chris or someone else, can you speak to, you know, how ODA, you know, as the one who we're kind of under when we're talking about all this, would it make ODA feel better if we you know, in the meantime did waivers and things of that sort?
I think that would be the prudent thing, especially if the council's looking to hold an in-person meeting just in the event there was an accident. whether that's, I don't think hand-to-hand combat would come up, but a traffic, car accident, something along those lines, that is more of a likely possible if you're thinking to do field trips. I don't think it would be a bad idea, let me put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll take note of that, Patrick, between you and maybe some consultation with ODA on if there's any specific language that would need to be in that kind of waiver, working with maybe some folks from our legislative committee. If anybody has any waivers that they use, especially government agency representatives here today, if you have any waivers that you use for that kind of stuff that you're able to share so that we can pull off a language, I would assume there's maybe some sort of state standard template somewhere. But let's work on that prior to the June meeting. Any other discussions or things anyone wanted to bring forward on insurance, legislative concepts, and things of that nature? A lot of good points in the chat too. We'll make sure that those are recorded and incorporated into the minutes.
I have one thing, Troy. Just
Go
looking
ahead, Noel.
at the minutes, I saw that we had some discussion last time about a legislative concept about the emergency fund concept and a pop for potential additional funding to replenish the emergency fund. Is that something that there's been any progress on?
No, not anything that Christina and I have led. I don't know that it's something in the works at ODA either at the moment. I think some of that was still dependent on clarifications about some certain things about the way the emergency fund worked. There were some ideas getting thrown around that you'll remember about being able to spend it actually on whatever we want versus it being a real emergency account, or do we just call it that? And and some of those clarifications. But I guess the short answer is no.
So probably just some more discussion at either a work group meeting or in a future council meeting to determine which direction we want to go and set up the next steps. But probably next year if we're looking at a pop. Nothing to
That would
happen.
be for, yeah, that would be for next year. And I think, Troy, you're right that some of those were hinging on some ongoing discussions that we've been having as part of the MIU discussion group and kind of clarifying. And so I do believe that was kind of the consensus, was to hold off, but points for consideration for possibly for next year, certainly.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, well, we're staying on schedule. We're a couple minutes ahead. The next short item I had on here was, if you haven't seen your email, the Western IPM Center grant proposal that the council submitted for the build out of the Information Species Hub was funded in full, along with 10 other projects. They set a record this year in total grants, over 450,000. So excited to see the council be in the running there and score so highly. So congratulations to everybody who's helped and worked on all the different things we work on. This is a victory for the whole council and an exciting moment to be able to build that out. So thank you for sure to Julene Littlejohn, who prepared that proposal while she was still acting as our coordinator. I know we're waiting for some things, I think, with the California Department of Ag on, official switches getting flipped in the budget mechanisms and things like that. But I did see an official announcement today in the Western IPM Center's March newsletter. They did a nice feature right at the top that talked about all the different projects that were funded and a lot of neat stuff happening in the Pacific Northwest as a result of some of those grants. So pretty neat. Jolene, I don't know if you're within earshot. Was there anything you wanted to add, or Patrick? Patrick will be working on this too. We've got some service contracts that we'll be needing to work out soon with ODA for some of the different partners. But I don't know if Patrick or Jolene, you wanted to add anything.
Thanks, Troy. I don't have anything to add to that. I think we'll have more updates as we get going with the collaborators and having a plan moving forward. But yay!
Yeah, super exciting, and it's great news on the heels of the invasive species hub, the kind of pilot species that we spoke about at our last meeting. That has been published to the website and is technically viewable to the public. I know that Patrick is working on some communications for kind of the official launch from the OISC, but that resource is live on the website, and there's ways to preview kind of upcoming species and things like that. It's really neat. So Patrick, I don't know, do you have any update on the official OISC announcement that we can send out to the world?
Yep, that I've been working on that today, and I'll be sending probably you, Troy, and Christina a draft of that so that we can get that out and get it announced to everybody. But looking forward to working with everybody on it.
Oops, I was
Sorry, you're
muted.
on mute.
Let's make sure we get some folks from the working group, the hub working group, able to kind of read through it too. They've put so much work into it, and want to make sure nothing gets missed. Our education and outreach and communication committees would be some good eyes to look over that as well.
Troy, are you going to share a link to that or a premiere?
I certainly could. Let me pull that up real quick, and I can put that in the chat for everybody. You go right to our homepage, and the first link under invasive species subheader up there is the hub, and it is live. I've shared it with a couple folks who have went and looked at it, who are really, really excited about it. The California Invasive Plant Council would like to do an article in their newsletter that talks about the effort. And
hey, Troy, can you share with our new members and with Morgan about, what if we had some talking points? If Morgan had to talk to the governor and says, what's so significant about OISC's information hub, and how does it replace the former worst list? What would those talking points be?
Sam, you could probably give them better than I could. You're putting me on the spot here.
Well, you might just bring it up, in a view share too, or let Jaylene do it. She's
Jaylene, you would be good at it.
The best driver.
I should know to prepare for these things.
It's not just a database, right? It's not just a database. There's something more valuable than just a database.
It's not just a database. I don't know that I can share at the moment, but the intent of the Info Hub was to provide a resource for the network of invasive species managers, practitioners, and decision makers in Oregon, as well as the
it can share it, Jaylene. You just got notified.
Okay, one moment. I have to get to it. Oh, I want to be here, huh? All right. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so the intent of the Information Hub is to expand upon what was previously published as the Oregon Invasive Species Council's 100 worst list or worst species list, and that list was published and updated each year. It was originally limited to 100 species, but the challenge there was that it wasn't a dynamic resource. So it was a list that was in a PDF form or Excel spreadsheet, and it was sort of this kind of challenge to update it each year, because how do you decide what stays on and what stays off? It was intended to be a prevention list, so trying to exclude these species from Oregon, but then you have something like gorse on the South Coast where you really want to contain that in that area and not let it move. So it becomes a management species in certain areas, but then an early detection species in others. And so in 2020, there was a working group put together under Kat's leadership of the OISC, and we talked about how can we update this resource to make it really useful based on the information that we heard in 2016 to publish or put together the statewide strategic plan. And one of the big things that we heard over and over was we need a hub of information that doesn't recreate anything, but really allows people to organize their own, like to access information that helps them do their own work, because people in one part of the state or one part of the region have different priorities than others. And so when we're often asked for like, what's the top 10 invasive species that we're concerned about, that may change based on your locale, or that may change based on the particular priorities of, whether something's been detected that year or not. So we decided to put together a database and found this software called Airtable that allows us to put together easy to access information. And we organized it in different categories. So the top here has active alert species, and that is intended to be something that is highlighting a pressing concern. A probable detection of spotted lanternfly in Washington is an active alert. Where there might be, when there was a detection of giant hornet, that was an active alert. And these are right up at the top. I think we have some work to do as far as the layout and how the user, or how we will use this on this page. And so I'm open to any feedback you might have there, but this was intended to be right up top, and we can talk more moving forward about how to really improve upon the active alerts piece of it. But then moving down, we have species to look for in Oregon, and when you click on one of these buttons, you'll see it goes to a filtered list in the Info Hub, and this database then has an image. You can click on things, you can see the different description and the content. We are looking at things like pathways, being able to understand species that are causing significant economic impacts or have threats for that, and whether it's established or not in the state. There's a lot of attributes and a lot of information that can go into the hub, and it allows you to then go, these are all the published species profiles. And if I view this database, then I'm able to filter by certain conditions. So maybe I'm only concerned about species that have an active alert. And that was the view we saw before. Maybe I'm only concerned about aquatic species. And so freshwater, I'm going to filter there. And then we can get down to filtering by geographic region and other attributes and narrow down a list that is a priority for you or for where you might be traveling to actually increase and enhance early detection in the state, rather than trying to argue about what's the top 10 species we want people to look for. So that's the background. I could talk a long time about Airtable and the Info Hub, and I will not, though. So if you have any questions for me, I'm definitely available for that.
That was unplanned. I appreciate you jumping in there, Jolene. I encourage everybody to hop over to the website when you get a chance over the next couple days and play around with that sorting and filtering. It's a lot of fun, and you can sort and filter by any field, and so you can really make some neat lists, and it's a great tool. Appreciate all the hard work that's been put into that, and looking forward to its expansion. And so over the next few months, you'll hear consistent calls for reaching out to the working group if you want to help with the review of the current list of unpublished species, so that we can get all that information, confirmed and approved, and add different resources and links that we need to add to those profiles so that we can get those published. And some of that'll happen over the course of the Western IPM grant project that we got, as well as the hub gets built out. So you'll be hearing a lot of different calls related to the hub over the next 6 to 9 months, really. So Thanks again.
Troy, can I mention one thing? I want to really
Yeah,
thank
go ahead.
Jaylene for the excellent update. Really cool attribute of this hub is that it allows regional policymakers or local policymakers to really look in their region as to what should I be concerned about? What is it that has been here for a while? What it is that is emerging? What it is that it's coming? And so it gives that local or regional emphasis. And then it also gives us the ability to look at it statewide. Like, if we really had to focus on make investments in the next legislative session or agencies, what would those species or pathways be that we want to really focus and prioritize because they're so emerging. So I think that's one of the cool things about the hub, and that it's not static, it's very dynamic. So thanks.
It's a great point, Sam. We're still within our schedule in relation to the hub or the IPM grant project. If anybody had anything else, Karen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wonder if in the future we could get some training about, for example, I don't know if it's in there, Mediterranean oak borer is a new beetle that's been an issue for a while, and it's a big issue in California. And so if Wyatt and I wanted to add that or wanted to supplement and update the information that's there, I would like to know how to approach that, and whether I talk to someone else who is a specialist and has editing capability, or whether I do that myself, or how we would approach updating. It's supposed to be, it's dynamic, so how do we intend to support that dynamism?
So I can actually speak up on that a little bit. Jolene, Nikki, you can always correct me, but the working group's actually looking to put together trainings on Airtable for not only collaborators, so those that will be updating the back end, kind of the experts per se, and then also a user training, so we can see what those that would look at this as a resource actually see and how to use it, and then that would progress into a workshop down the line. So the Hub Working Group has a meeting a week from today, and we'll be able to iron this out and kind of get the next steps. But those trainings are definitely on the table, and it's something worth thinking about and trying to find a way to get as many people involved in updating a large interactive electronic resource. So it's kind of interesting in that sense. Yeah, Jolene, Nikki, if you have anything to add to that, feel free.
I don't have anything to add. I think you got that perfectly. So we have talked in the past though about adding like a form you can fill out if you're a user and there's a species you want us to consider adding. But like Alex said, that'll be addressed in our upcoming meeting, and we'll get that all ironed out. And just so you all know, Alex is now the leader of the Hub Working Group. I have stepped down and Alex has stepped up, and he's already doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you, Nikki. But yeah, I mean, Jolene has, we're just passing compliments to everyone, but it's trying to assist Jolene in the ongoing work as much as possible. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, that update was great, Alex. I would add, this is Jolene, that there is a form that we've started just to kind of for this soft launch and pilot as the working group is ironing out some of the details. I'm going to post a link to a form in the chat where you can propose and submit information that could be edited on profiles that are published, or requests for additions, or any of those things for now. And then it allows you to, upload a Word document if that's the easiest way for you to just look at the hub, look at the different types of attributes and kind of type them out, attach it. You can add those updates into the form itself, however is kind of preferred for you. And any feedback on that process can go to Alex or the working group as we're trying to make sure those details are working for everyone. Can I make one more quick point, Troy?
You sure can.
So one quick thing that I just want to make sure is reiterated is that this hub is intended to be a resource that compiles all of the really kind of rich and interesting information across taxa and across agencies. It's really intended to be a, visual, like a tangible resource of a role that the OISC has, right? Of bringing these different things together and potentially, sometimes assessing what they mean. We have all of these potential issues for a particular species. What does that actually mean for Oregon or for the Northwest? And so I do recognize that some of the fields in the current hub may seem duplicative, and I want to iron that out as well. There are a lot of really valuable resources, but you kind of compiling them in a way that's really user friendly, but then also links out to the agency or to the entity or the material that it came from is sort of a fine balance that we're trying to find. So I do want to reiterate that the work of the Western IPM Center grant will build upon what is not available for climate change, impacts on first foods, and compiling some best management practices around these invasive species threats for the region. So I do think that there's two different kind of goals in general that you'll kind of be looking at with that lens over the course of the next 6 months as we make edits. But I welcome all of your feedback. Thank you for that.
No, thanks, Jolene. And I think that last point you made is super important for us to remember as we work with this tool. In the years ahead, there's a lot of potential here, and really, it's an information hub, right? It's a clearinghouse, but it's really an expression of the council's mission. And it's something that we can use and we can leverage to get the word out. It's so shareable. Anyone can embed all kinds of different things, right? It's a really user-friendly tool with a lot of potential going forward, and it just provides a great opportunity for the council to achieve little pieces of our mission. So, anything else on that before we carry on? And yeah, thank you, Alex, for stepping up, and thank you, Nikki, for all the hard work you put in as you built it up and passed the reins to Alex. I know Alex is already going bonkers getting things going, so appreciate that momentum.
Troy, there was Shauna asked a question about whether there was going to be any reposting in social media about this. So maybe you could put that out.
Yeah, Patrick, I don't know if it's already part of the plan, the template, your outlines for our communication. Of course, we'll have an email communication, but it would be great if we could have some sort of social media caption and an image of some sorts that could get passed around for anybody who wanted to share it out. We'll make sure we make a post on the council's social media post that can then be shared as well if someone didn't want to post it themselves. So thank you for that, Shauna. We'll make sure that we include a social media, kind of package with the release. The next section is a quick budget update. Patrick has that for us.
Oops. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So no big changes really. You know, our emergency fund still sitting at 53,000. Fish and Wildlife Service grant, of course, is expended. We do have a BLM grant that will expire at the end of the year, still just a touch under 15,000 there. This is, I think, through the 18th of February or somewhere in that zone, this report. So I know that, yeah, as of 2/18/2022. So it's 218,000 left out of 292, kind of starting this fresh fiscal situation.
Will the Western IPM Center grant show up on this? Is it already on there? It's not.
No, it's not on this one. The last communication I got from the awards department, because the money does come through the California Department of Ag, you know, they're doing whatever it is they do to make those funds available and get them kind of transferred down the line. But ODA would again act as the fiscal agent for that grant as well. So I would anticipate that we'll start seeing that on our reports, and then there may be, you know, maybe a more detailed internal budget as we work as a council on the project itself. We do have multiple subcontracts that'll be initiated under that project with different collaborators, and we'll need to track, you know, some of that as well. I think that came in, if I remember right, right around the $30,000 mark, that grant from the IPM Center. Any questions or input, concerns on the current state of the budget? Okay. Going forward, you know, we have, as when Rick sat as chair, we did go through and start looking at the council operations as more of a line item style budget, more of like a program style budget. You know, that hasn't been completely adopted yet by the council, but it's something that the budget committee will continue to work on and keep updated and refine, so that as we potentially move forward with POPs or things like that, that it can be, you know, a good basis for things. So that is all we have on the budget. We are a little ahead of schedule. We are a lot ahead of schedule. 25 minutes, as a matter of fact. So we have a break set for this time that was going to last until 2:35. I don't know about our presenters. They need to stay.
Steve is already on, and I told Sylvia that we might be going early, but I don't know about Robin, who is ahead of them, maybe. So I think if you took your break now, I don't know what Robin's schedule is, and maybe Jaylene or Kat's more in tune with either one with them.
I will check with Robin. There are 3 Green Crab presenters. It's you and Steve and Sylvia. Is that right?
Steve and Sylvia. Sean is not presenting.
Hi, Shauna. Okay. I will. I'll check with Robin and see if she can start earlier. Would that be 2:15?
Yeah, I mean, we can extend the breaks, and we can probably find things to talk about if we need to keep them, you know, at the time we agreed. I want to respect everybody's schedules and how they worked them in order to be able to be here. So if we could go a little early, that'd be great, but it's not the end of the world.
It's just things usually take longer than we expect, and I'm guessing that's still to come. So, I'll check with her.
I'm just wondering, you know, since Steve is here, if maybe if it's okay with the council in terms of the process, that we might maybe shift the schedule so that Steve doesn't have to pop in an hour later.
Yeah, except Sylvia is not on yet. I could get a hold of her though, because she's the front end of the presentation.
Maybe we should just take that break while that gets resolved then, you know.
Yeah, I think that's better, and then we can, and if they're ready to go ahead, because she was going to come in at the break, so we might be able to do that and then reach out to Rob and find out what her situation is.
Yeah, let's just do a 20-minute break. Isn't going to hurt us. That'll bring us back at what the time we were going to go to break at. So
yeah,
let's just go ahead and take a quick 20-minute break. And
I think Robin, you know, I think she's still a young kid. You know, we do have to probably abide by her schedule, depending on what the children's schedules are.
Go ahead, Karen.
How about if we break now, but come back in like 10 minutes and do the roundtable? So if people have content for the roundtable, they just, you know, mentally prepare, and we could ask for volunteers at that time, and that'll get us ahead on a later agenda item.
That makes sense, Karen.
I'm in, Karen. I'm in. So what do we got on the clock? We have 2:04 on my clock. Let's return at 2:15, and we can open the floor up for some roundtable updates and try to get our time schedule back on track.
Sounds good.
Okay. Patrick, I don't know if we can display a PowerPoint slide or something that says we're on break, or you can see
sure, yeah, I can put some up.
Something of that nature.
Troy, Steve sent he'll need to be a presenter. We already tested Sylvia before the meeting started. Oh, looks like she just arrived too, so that's great. I don't even have to call you, Sylvia. We are running a little early, and we were going to take a quick break, do a roundtable. So I think we're figuring about 10-15 minutes from now, but you might be interested in the roundtable too, because there's a lot of stuff going around. So you get to finish your cup of coffee, and we'll see everybody in about 10 minutes, right, Troy?
Yep, 10 minutes. Thank you, Sylvia. Nice to see you too, Steve. Thank you both so much.
Thanks so much for the invitation. Christine, so during this break, can we try our screen share and make sure all that technology is going to work?
Wonderful. Yeah, if Patrick is still hanging in there, I know he has. He's here, and he tested with Sylvia. This is a little different from a typical Zoom meeting, but it's not that tough. So I think what has to happen is Patrick has to make you a presenter, and so you can give the instructions, Patrick.
Yeah, Steve, you should be good to go if you want to hit your green button at the bottom of the window there.
Okay, I'll proceed. Patrick shared with me that one, so I'm hitting share now.
Not the right screen. That might be, no, not the right screen.
Well, we're getting his homepage. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, all the meeting control things were blocking where I put the folder, so that
Yeah.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay, so does that work? You can see the management of European green crab.
We can see that.
And the one thing about this particular vehicle that we use is you can go over to the right and increase the size of it on your own, and you don't have to wait for the presenter to do that. it kind of move around, whether you want to shrink the number of heads that you see at the top, you can move it up, and it gives the viewer a little more control.
Yes, I see that. I am having trouble advancing, so I don't seem to be able to move the slide onto the next one.
Let's
There we
see.
go. Okay. All right, they're working.
All right.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
I'll try one more time.
So I'm going to close up and
Yeah, keep it, just minimize it, and then where you can bring it up easily when he gives you the opportunity, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. I have never controlled one of these meetings, so I'm a Zoom queen, but not this one. So
well,
I
okay, there's a time lag in the
now
share.
Sylvia is a new presenter, so she should be able to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to share. And what do you see?
Our agenda right now.
You see it?
There you are.
Okay, so you want me to minimize it now?
Yeah, whatever works good for you. I think Patrick will still have to kind of give you the opportunity to be presenter. I think he hands that kind of off as a controller. So.
Okay, so I just get out of it now, right? Or
yeah, it looks good, and I think we'll do well.
So now what I'll do is, let's see, stop sharing screen. Okay, I just did that. Okay, so I know how to do it.
All right, good to see you.
Okay.
I'm going to turn my camera off.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Sylvia. Hey, sorry. Thanks so much for all of your work in preparing for this. Sorry, I just got my slides done.
Good,
And
good.
I'll keep my time frame to 5 minutes. I do have 9 slides, and I got a bunch of background slides there as well. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, Christine was saying they might be running a little early, so we might get started a little early.
Yes, so I think we're in good shape. We should be in good shape.
So we'll get started in a few minutes instead of 2:25. We'll be get started 2:15. So.
Well, I think we're going to do a round table of the different people on the council. And yeah, we've changed the agenda because we ran faster than we thought. So we're not sure that Robin Draham can, she's got kid issues, so she may have to come in at 2:35. So
okay.
So we'll move up the round table, which is sort of the last thing, and we'll hang in that and then do Robin and then you guys. But I think you'll be really interested in Robin's stuff because they have a grant now to update the management plan for the state. So that it really is relevant to everything that you have to offer as well. So I'm really pleased you're both here. And the fact that we're recording this, so that will be helpful.
Christine and Sylvia, I shared my slides at the same time as I forwarded them to you. I also forwarded them to ODFW's Wildlife Integrity Coordinator, Rick Boatner.
Oh, okay. Okay, Rick's still on board. That's good. Good to know that he's still around.
And Rick is on this call, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can't get rid of me that easy.
Oh, okay. Okay, Rick.
He's even, Big Brother is even listening.
Yeah.
Rick, while you're on the phone, you know, I'm slated to give a presentation before the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission.
Oh, great.
Will include next week on Friday, March 18th. And one of the 4 issues that I'm going before them is to request to increase the recreational take of European green crab from existing 10 per person per day to 35 per person per day.
Oh, I like that.
Yes, and during that, we made the decision early on to not touch the language at all in the controlled species list, ODFW controlled species list. So that all just remains the same at this point. Unclear to see what the commission will do. You know, they're a pretty conservation-minded group this time.
Yeah.
So hard to say what they'll ask me to do. They may accept that recommendation just verbatim, or may ask for a modification.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to have this opportunity to speak with the Oregon Invasive Species Council immediately before addressing the Fish and Wildlife Commission. So this is great timing.
No, that's great to increase the limit. When we first put that rule in, I tried to get the limit to no limit, but that didn't go very far.
This process that I'm going through for the shellfish program is exactly parallel to the situation a decade ago, when we had recall we had the early introduction of the non-native purple varnish clam.
Right.
And that was initially no limit, and then limit established at 36 per person per day, and then we upped that to 72 per person per day, without letting it be unlimited, just due to habitat concerns, misidentification, potential damage to other native species and such.
No, yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close process. Yeah.
And that's a week from this Friday, right? Commission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
when are you on?
I don't know the time, but it's Exhibit F. So that
towards the afternoon then.
Yeah, afternoon. Yeah.
Unless they change everything, which has happened before.
Which could occur. Right.
Okay.
All right.
That should be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. Hi, Sam.
Steve, Sylvia, how are you? Good to hear it.
Feel like, the Red Queen hypothesis, Red Queen, just running as fast as I can to stay in place.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you're bringing the topic of the green crab to the council. That I think that's really valuable context.
Well, thanks so much, and hats off to Sylvia Yamada for really being the key person for keeping this going. Yes.
I think it's valuable because we actually have the Governor's Natural Resources advisor with us today, Morgan. So this will be really cool for her to hear as well.
Good. And with that, it is 2:16. So we'll go ahead and call an end to the break. Let people get back in here and do a little shuffle of the agenda. We're still ahead of schedule, 10 minutes ahead of where we were going to take a break. So we can use the next little bit of time to at least start with roundtable and committee updates, try to get ourselves a little closer back on schedule, respect Robin's scheduled time on the agenda. And then we'll move into the green crab presentation from Sylvia and Steve. So if someone wants to kick off roundtable from your organizational or agency perspective, you can just call on whoever, or you can speak up. No exciting news out there, no cool projects getting off the ground.
I think you're just going to have to call on them, Troy. Make them talk.
I'll share.
Wyatt.
Go ahead.
Wyatt, then Karen.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. And it involves a project that Karen and I are working on, and we're revamping a portion of the Oregon Forest Pest Detector program. So U.S. Forest Service was kind enough to provide some funding to hold a training in Southern Oregon the last week of May. And it's for early detection of the Mediterranean oak borer that Karen mentioned earlier today on the phone call. We, here in Oregon, we've captured 2 individuals in trapping programs. One individual was caught in an ODF trap, one was caught in an ODA trap. So just 2 individuals, but in California, in Napa County and 2 other surrounding counties, this Mediterranean oak borer is causing damage to live oak, which is in the white oak. Valley oak, which is in the white oak group. And so it does have a pathogen that's associated with it. This is the first time it's been shown to cause damage in North American oaks. So we are going to create a Oregon Forest Pest Detector module and put on a training in Southern Oregon for early detection. In conjunction with that, I'm going to be helping with ODA do some more delimiting trapping in Marion County, where the last positive detection of this beetle was made. So that's sort of some news from ODF. And another bit of news is another project that I'm working on is genetic conservation of Oregon ash in preparation for emerald ash borer. So we don't have emerald ash borer here in Oregon. And ODF received a grant again from the Forest Service to collect seed and put it in a seed bank for genetic conservation. And so we have some media releases, and this week I'm going to be doing an interview on NPR for this, and teaming up with Pennsylvania State University researcher who's doing some genomic study on this. So yeah, that's sort of the latest from my unit.
Thanks, Wyatt. That's exciting. And maybe on the Oregon Pest Detector Program, I know there were, or I think that at least that there were some shifts in how that's delivered and stuff over the pandemic. What's the current status on that if people wanted to get involved in the program?
Yeah, so it's going to be live in person. The venue is we still don't have a venue picked out, but it will be in person in Grants Pass area. And it's going to be just like before, where there'll be like a approximately 2-hour classroom session followed by a 2-hour field component. And so this is going to be late May, so after the mask mandate's been lifted, and our state offices will be open. So we're able to have that in-person training. And we're looking at, just like before, looking at some continuing education credits. And this is going to be a training for professionals. So not a citizen scientist, but for training the natural resource professionals in the Grants Pass, Medford, Ashland area. But our training will be posted on the ODF website, so other people can look at. There'll be a fact sheet created that Karen and I are working on. So this is all in conjunction with Karen, and very grateful for her enthusiasm and support for this and involvement in this.
Well, we'll certainly want to get those links, be able to publish those to our groups too. That's great. Wonderful leadership there.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen. Thank you, Wyatt.
So I think I'll add to Wyatt, we're also supporting some testing at the University of California, Davis to try and test whether Oregon white oak is susceptible to these fungi that the beetle carry, and whether it is also therefore vulnerable to being killed, as Valley oak is experiencing now in California. I think Mediterranean oak borer ended up in the primer, and so I'll double check that, but we may have some updates for the Airtable. As far as a more generic update, just to share the news, the Entomological Society of America announced a replacement common name for the invasive moth Lymantria dispar, and it will now be known as the spongy moth. And that sounds a little goofy sometimes, but spongy moth relates to a common name that's used in France and used in French-speaking Canada, because this particular moth's egg masses are sort of soft and spongy looking. And so that's come out. The Washington Invasive Species Council on Thursday is planning whether to make a recommendation to ask the Washington State Department of Agriculture to petition the Entomological Society of America to adopt a common name for the insect that's currently known as the Asian giant hornet, and just replace that common usage name. I don't even know if it's an official common name, but with the official common name, giant hornet. So perhaps we can put the continent of origin and maybe that murder hornet thing behind us too. But so that's something that the Washington Invasive Species Council is considering on Thursday. Also, that Washington Invasive Species Council meeting on Thursday, a lot of the content of that meeting relates to the European green crab. The governor of Washington recently declared a European green crab emergency because of expanding populations inside Puget Sound or threatening Puget Sound. And so many of the people who are presenting and have interest in that topic today, if you want to attend the Washington Invasive Species Council meeting on Thursday, let me know and I can provide the links to you. And then as time, the other thing I want to say is the Communications Committee. Our next task is to develop the 2021 annual report that describes the OISC members and their networks accomplishments during 2021. And so I hope to work with Patrick and Alicia on a plan for recruiting that content to populate that report. But I apologize, I haven't gotten back to them recently to sort of work through that plan. That's it for me, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else want to go?
I can go, Troy. So I've got two updates. First one, following up on Karen's report from the Entomological Society of America's decision to change the name of Lametria dispar to spongy moth. Where, as you all know, this council and myself, along with several other members, Christine Moffett and Kat De Rivera and Jeline, we've been working on a project looking at common names and common names to make them more effective for the public to understand in terms of early detection, versus then having common names that that have a ethnic or a national or in sometimes a racial slur associated with them, because they don't necessarily help improve a citizen's ability or even someone in our agency's ability to identify that species. Because if we look at, say, a green crab, how do I know if you're European or you're Asian green crab? So those are some of the things that we looked at. And so one of the first things we looked at was, is there even any patterns or consistencies in terms of how common names are developed, and why do some species have a ethnicity or a country associated with them and others not? And it turns out that there are very few species that actually have a country or ethnic name associated with them. And there's really there doesn't seem to be any consistent patterns. And so that's a project that we're working on, and Christine and myself and Kat are putting together a presentation at the International Conference on Aquatic Invasive Species, which will then turn into a publication for a peer-reviewed journal in management of biological invasion that, once we actually have a draft, we'd be happy to share that. But that's one of the topics that builds off of what Karen shared. And in terms of Asian hornet, apparently we learned from the ESA members that we talked to last Friday that there isn't actually an official ESA designated name for the giant hornet. So this represents an opportunity to name a relatively new species of concern without all the baggage of having to change the jurisdictions, the naming, that are probably already in administrative codes and others that are commonly used. Although, unfortunately, even though it was translated as murder hornet in Japan, the fact that the media eventually took it on and started calling it in media presses as the Asian murder hornet certainly doesn't help in any degree either. I mean, if it was murder hornet, that's one thing, but you start adding Asian murder hornet, European murder hornet, South American murder hornet, that really doesn't help in its identification at all. Okay, moving on. Next task is that over the summer, the Forest Service and BLM have had a long-standing program to look at the effectiveness of the Northwest Forest Plan and the BLM's state management plan of Oregon, Western Oregon, and how effective these plans have been in improving the riparian and aquatic habitats and health of different watersheds. And part of that program is called AREP, Aquatic Riparian Enhancement Program. And it's a program back in about 2008. We started training their crews in the identification of riparian and aquatic invasive species. And since then, they have actually incorporated riparian and aquatic invasive species as part of their sampling as they frequent these watersheds every 5 years to gauge the progress in terms of ecological health and indicators. And so not only do they look for these potential invasive species, but they also have a very strong protocol in terms of decontaminating their gear, and so that they do not spread from one watershed to another watershed, because these watersheds tend to be in relatively healthy conditions, and those are certainly the ones that we certainly do not want to infest with invasive species. But however, during the summer, the first case of a diatom on the stream bottom near Hackelman Creek called Didymo or rock snot was actually found in a very small presence. It was in a fairly decayed form because it was in August, and you all know we had a very hot summer with very low stream flows. But nevertheless, based upon the characteristics of the samples that were brought in through microscopy, and also how we feel, because these diatoms tend to have a lot of silica in them, so they have a certain feel to them. We believe that it was Didymo, and so the Willamette National Forest, as well as the region, is going to be starting a pretty intensive monitoring program to detect the extent and presence of that Didymo. As you all know, Didymo is a concern mainly because once it does spread, it covers the stream bottom with a bentha, and essentially reducing a large part of the food chain. And when it decomposes pretty much almost at once, and that really reduces the oxygen levels in these fairly pristine streams that we have, usually in upper elevations. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. It's not good news to hear about Didymo. I remember in 2009 at the Region 6 Forest Service stream survey training up on the upper Deschutes, getting lessons about looking out for Didymo. But thankfully, we never found any back then.
Oftentimes, what we think is Didymo is actually another diatom. But that's not what we think was found this year. So,
Unfortunate. We'll be looking for updates. And we are essentially back on schedule. The time is 2:32. I see Robin has entered the room. Robin, are you ready for your spot?
I am coming to you from inside my car at the Lake Oswego Public Library, where there is Wi-Fi. Woohoo!
Awesome. Well, thanks for making it happen for us. Appreciate you being here. I will turn it over to Robin for an update on the revision of Oregon State Plan for Aquatic Nuisance Species. The floor is yours, Robin.
Alrighty, thank you. Great. Well, it's nice to see everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and do this without slides because I don't think you guys need slides for this because it's going to be quick. So I'm here today to just give you an update on the revision of the Oregon Aquatic Nuisance Species Management Plan. At the last meeting, Kat DeRivera gave you a brief introduction and had me jump in a little bit on this. Basically, what's happening is that Oregon has a state aquatic nuisance species management plan, and it was written in 2000 and approved in 2001. So it's a little out of date. And right now, what we're doing is working through this process of revision. It is basically going to look like a new plan when we're done in terms of the number of things that we need to update. Now, what is a state aquatic nuisance species management plan, and why do we call them aquatic nuisance species and not aquatic invasive species? Well, that's because the plan is a state plan called for under the Non-Indigenous Aquatic Nuisance Prevention and Control Act of 1990. So we're using this dated language. It was later amended by the National Invasive Species Act in 96, but still it's a while ago for those of us who have been working in invasive species for quite some time. And basically what the plans are is that they were developed by states or sometimes interstate cooperative agreements, and then approved by the National Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force, which is currently headed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the plans have three primary elements. They identify aquatic invasive species of concern, they identify a management framework, and then they list objectives, strategies, and actions with some priorities and some implementation information. To give you a little background on the Oregon plan is run out of the Center for Lakes and Reservoirs. So for ages, it was run by Mark Sitzma. When I was at Portland State University, I assisted him with this. Currently, Kat DeRivera is the sort of de facto lead on the plan. And as I said, it's a little over 20 years old, but it was written at a time when aquatic invasive species activities were really just getting off the ground in Oregon. Invasive species awareness was on the rise, both within agencies and individuals. This all sort of happened right around the time when zebra mussels were becoming a big concern in having moved out of the Great Lakes and into the Midwest. This was 6 years prior to our understanding of quagga mussels and their arrival in Lake Mead. And so it was written at a time when there were very different priorities and context for aquatic invasive species. To update you on the justification for this, one being 20 years old, it's really out of date. The original intent, as stated by the legislation that led to these plans, was that they would be updated every 5 years or more frequently as needed. For obviously, species names have changed, management priorities have changed, our outreach strategies have changed, and we really want to have a new plan that's a functional document that we can really refer to when identifying priorities, and this will give us the opportunity to do that. We'll be able to benefit from new partners in the revision and review process, and Samara Group, who is partnering with me on this revision, has come up with an engagement plan for this. It'll allow us to demonstrate those management priorities to new funding entities, which is really crucial at times when we are looking for new funding streams. The goals of the engagement plan that Samara came up with are fairly straightforward. We need to engage with all the organizations that participated in the original plan's development. We want to enhance governmental collaboration through more intensive and deliberate recruitment of tribal representatives for our steering committee. We're going to expand engagement to include more layers of outreach and engagement roles than are required by the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. So the revision has a steering committee. We are developing an advisory network of reviewers. And then we will have at least one request for review of our revised draft plan from the members of the Oregon Invasive Species Council. We'll provide updates at council meetings, and then there will be a 2-week public review comment period for the revised draft. So in terms of components of a major revision and new plan, we've already completed a scoping exercise. We've consulted with the task force. We've contacted our regional coordinators and the chair of the Western Regional Panel on Aquatic Nuisance Species. So we've really reached out to the entities who traditionally guide a state through the plan development process. We're in the community engagement portion of this revision. We've hosted one steering committee meeting. We are updating the council as we go. And as I said, we're currently recruiting for our advisory review network. So we'll be revising the plan contents and getting reviews, revisions, and suggested content from those groups as we go along. After this process has been going for a while, there'll be a preliminary review by the task force. We'll have a final council presentation and opportunity for public comment. We'll be using the council meeting as a platform to kick off that public comment period. We're hoping to have a review by the governor's office and have the governor sign off on the plan. And then the final plan will go to the task force for a formal review and approval process. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them now or to contact me at any point in time. One of the interesting things about the council's role in this process is that there are council members who sit on the steering committee. There are council members who have already been invited to the advisory review panel. And again, the entire council will be invited to review our sort of almost final draft plan. And then lastly, we will be presenting the plan to the council in that public review kickoff. So, anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you, Robin. I wanted to point out that Jolene did share a link to a form if you want to sign up or share it with other folks who may want to sign up to be part of that advisory network. It's in the chat, and we will include it in the minutes as well. If you've been thinking about this, you know, Robin gave so many great reasons for why this plan needs updated, you know, relative to when it was first written and what was going on at the time versus what's going on today. And, you know, there's a ton of momentum right now for this after the zebra quagga scare last year and now green crab across the Northwest really getting a lot of attention. So highly encourage anybody who has something to contribute to get involved if you can. Thank you, Robin.
I think I'll probably end with I promise that being involved in each of these committees will not be too much extra work. Although I do note that some of you have not turned in all of your review items yet, but I'll find you. It's a great opportunity to really bring in some new perspectives on the world of aquatic invasive species, as well as come up with some ambitious 5-year goals that maybe we don't have represented yet. So, and get those in there. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to update everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Robin. If anyone has any follow-up questions, we can make sure everyone has the information they need, whether it's to get a hold of Robin or Kat or Jolene or some combination of. So thanks again for that update. It works in real nice to our next presentation. This next one's going to be about European green crab. Before we get there, we do have some new people in the audience, and I want to make sure that they are acknowledged. This meeting is being recorded. If you did not get that notification when you came into the room, although you should have, I'm just going to call you out real quick. If you could give a quick introduction of who you are. I see Joe Sims from Wallowa Resources.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for letting me sit in. Joe Sims with Wallowa Resources here in Enterprise, Oregon. I just started here the beginning of this year in the Canyonlands Program Manager position. My background a little bit, I've worked throughout the Southwest with the Colorado River Indian tribes and also the San Bernardino National Forest as well. So yeah, I'm excited to sit in and listen. So I appreciate all your time this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. I see Christopher Scott. Maybe come back to Christopher. I see Deborah Rudd.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. I work with the South Slough Reserve, and our science coordinator works a lot with the European green crabs. And so I just, he had sent a link out, and so did Christine. She's on our Friends of South Slough board about this meeting. And so I was just interested in hearing what you had to present.
Well, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Chelsea Buffington, see you on my screen.
Hi, everyone. Chelsea Buffington with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the European green crab lead for Washington State, so I just wanted to listen in on the green crab talk. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. Charity Glade, I see you on my screen. Oh, we got a message from Charity that her mic is not working. If you want to give a quick text introduction, you can. Charity Glade's coming to us from the Bureau of Land Management. I get the pleasure of being able to work with Charity as she sits on my steering committee at the Western Invasives Network. I see Beth Myers, Shania on the screen.
Nice work on the last name there, Troy. Thank you. This is Beth Myers Shania with ODA. I'm the Northwest Oregon noxious weed specialist, and I'm just taking a chance to listen in while I've got a spare hour or so here, and appreciate hearing the updates and what's going on.
Thanks, Beth. I feel like I'm in a performance review. I have 3 members of my WIN steering committee in the meeting today, all watching over me, so kind of uncomfortable. We'll go ahead and move forward. You know, I want to thank Christine for helping put this together. Christine did a lot of the legwork to help get this next presentation put together for us today. So Christine, maybe I'll turn it over to you real quick. Maybe you can introduce our speakers for us, and we can let them get underway.
Sure, be glad to. Steve and Sylvia have been working in aquatic resource issues, and Sylvia has really been the lead in understanding green crab dynamics, as partnered down here at South Slough with Sean and his science team, and has always made herself available. And Steve has roots down here on the South Coast, and now has moved mid-coast, and is the shellfish lead for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so when we had the discussions of green crab consumption in our last meeting in January, and then all of a sudden with the state of Washington order from the governor of an emergency order, I thought it's really important to bring this issue to the council, and I think Steve has got some ideas about how to move forward as a council in Oregon to deal with this emerging issue. So I'm going to let them take it. They really know their subject matter, and I'm sure it'll be a good presentation. So that is it, and I think it's going to start with Sylvia.
Yes, I need to share my screen. Patrick? There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get started then. Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Sean Scholar, who is my co-worker. We've worked together for quite a few years now. And European green crabs, as the name implies, are native to Europe and North Africa. They've been moved around the world and have established self-maintaining populations in many temperate areas of the world. Green crabs are both predators and ecological engineers. Perhaps the most dramatic predation story is that on the soft-shelled clam industry during the 1950s on the East Coast, when we had a warm period and green crabs were thriving and were hammering the soft-shelled clams. More recently, green crabs have been implicated in the transformation of very productive eelgrass beds. When they're abundant, what they can do is they can tear up the meadows in search of food items and turn a very productive ecosystem right here into bare substrate. Now, green crabs have been on the West Coast since prior to 1990, when they were first discovered by scientists in San Francisco Bay. Since then, the population has increased, and larvae from that population were transported north in ocean currents, as you can see. The most recent range expansion is Haida Gwaii, not too far from the Alaska panhandle. Now, what I want you to know is that there are certain times when range expansions can be particularly dramatic. For example, during El Nino events, when currents are especially strong and the water is especially warm. You can see here that Oregon, Washington, and southern British Columbia populations on Vancouver Island were first observed after the 1997-98 El Nino. And during the most recent El Nino, combined with the warm blob of 2015 to 16, that allowed green crab larvae from the open coast to get into the Salish Sea. The water was warm enough during winter times when the storms were moving the water and the larvae into the inland sea. Now, the mechanism for that is the Davidson current, which is a warm current that's active during the winter, and it runs all the way from Southern California, hugging the shore, all the way to northern Vancouver Island. And during El Nino events, the water can be as much as 2 degrees warmer than normal, and also the velocity can be as much as 30 miles per day. So that's a good mechanism for moving larvae northward. Now, we were able to monitor the 1998 El Nino year class in Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. We noted the growth, and then after 6 years, the crabs died of old age. Now, if you're looking at abundance of green crabs in Oregon, this is an example here, just one of the estuaries that we monitor, Coos Bay. You notice that you know, after a few years after the 98 El Nino, that green crabs weren't very abundant, and people were not particularly interested in green crabs. You know, numbers were well below 1 per trap. But then after the 2015-16 El Nino, numbers increased, and presently we have an average of about 6 crabs per trap in Coos Bay and in Yaquina Bay. Now, looking at a little bit more detail here, we're looking at recruitment of young of the year green crabs at the end of their first growing season. That's when the crabs are large enough to be trapped in crayfish traps. And we looked at 5 estuaries every year. And you can see that this is a 1998 year class, an El Nino year class. After that, we haven't had much recruitment. It's very sporadic. And the recruitments that we do see are related to warm ocean conditions. For example, 2005, 2006, 2010 was a mini El Nino. And you have many years of total recruitment failure. And that is related to ocean conditions, suggesting that larvae were transported from California northward. But then look what happens after the last El Nino. We have a steady increase of recruitment. Every year has been a good recruitment year. Now what's happening? Let's see. There we go. What we're thinking is that we now have more than just one larval source from California. We know that we can get larvae produced locally, as Alan Shanks has demonstrated during January, February, March of 2010. When he was sampling plankton, he found first instar green crabs in Coos Bay. Also, Carolyn Tepholt from Woods Hole has been analyzing samples that we've been sending her from our sampling sites on the West Coast. And these 4 bays right here have at least one animal that originated from a genetically distinct population on Vancouver Island. So we are getting larvae from the north as well. Now we're switching to Washington. And as you can see, there's a cooperative management network in place. It started in 2015 with the Washington Sea Grant Crab Team. It's a consortium of biologists from universities, different agencies, tribes, shellfish growers, etc., as well as many, many volunteers that agree to trap for green crabs at least once a month in their particular area. And you can see all those orange dots represent the network. And also the yellow circles represent tribal co-managers and also other partners such as shellfish growers. Now this is what the crab team found last year. We're finding that a lot of crabs were found between Padilla Bay and the Canadian border. And I will be talking about a Dungeness Spit, Drayton Harbor, and Lummi Sea Pond. Now see all these places where green crabs were not found? We want to keep it that way. So if we're looking at Dungeness Spit and Drayton Harbor, what you see immediately is that they're fairly shallow bays that are enclosed by spits. And that means that water in these bays does not flush very well. It has a high retention time. And what happens is once larvae get in there, green crab larvae, the population can build up because the larvae are retained and not lost to the system. So they're almost like incubators, green crab larval incubators. So what happened at Dungeness Spit, the manager was very bright in that he decided to start trapping the green crabs, even though they weren't especially abundant. And each year they set 50 traps 4 times a week from April to October. So well over 11,000 traps were set. And what happened was the population was reduced from 5 per 100 traps to 1 per 100 trap. And the good news is that this year they found no young of the year. So it does not look like there was recruitment going on. And I would call that a success story. Drayton Harbor has a very similar story. Catches were at a high of 8 per 100 traps, and now they're only 3 per 100 traps. Now, the success was due to early detection, the presence of a very small population, a small size of the area, and restricted distribution within that area. So trapping could be intensified just where the green crabs were most abundant. Also, a lot of traps were set, at least 3,000 to 5,000 traps per year. Also, Dungeness spit received very low larval pressure after the last El Nino because the water from the open coast was too cold. So that was, nature helping us there, and also the geographic location. Now, our next challenge is the Lummi Sea Pond. This is an artificial pond that was created 50 years ago by building a dike around this pond. And the Lummi Nation uses this pond to rear salmon and shellfish. It's very shallow. Eelgrass is in that pond, and since it's shallow, it warms up. And once green crabs got in there, we have another incubator situation. The population was self-maintaining, and it built up very rapidly. Now, this year, this is the object of a massive control effort. Now, looking at catch per unit effort, you see Dungeness Spit and Drayton Harbor. They're not of particular concern right now. However, Lummi Sea Pond had 4 per trap, 4 green crabs per trap, very similar to what we were finding on the open coast in Walapa Bay, Yaquina Bay, and Coos Bay. Now, how do these numbers compare to other areas in the world? Well, this is not a slide that you want to show a lot of people because it's not strictly comparable. You can only look at it as a ballpark comparison because trapping conditions were different, the traps were different. But anyways, it looks like the most we ever caught in Yaquina Bay and Coos Bay this last year was 25 to 35. That is 10 times less than what has been found in Bolinas Lagoon and Pipestem Inlet. These are both sort of incubators. They have high water retention in these areas. Tasmania, very similar. East Coast, including Placenta Bay in Newfoundland, very high traps. But then look at this Aveiro Lagoon in Portugal. You set a trap and you get 100 crabs per hour. So we still have a long way to go, but now is the time to address the problem. Now, what the Lummi Nation Business Board did was they connected with growers and biologists from agencies, and they came together and approached Governor Jay Inslee, telling him that green crabs were increasing in number and that they pose an imminent danger to Washington's marine environment, marine-based economy, and the cultural well-being of both tribal and non-tribal residents. And the time to control them is now because it will only get more expensive in the future. And Governor Inslee was convinced, and he released $8.5 million to start controlling green crabs. A big bulk of that will go to Lummi Sea Pond. And that's all I have to say. This is a slide from Ellen Plurse from Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. These outline some of the goals for the future, both short-term and long-term funding, coordination with Canadian agencies, and also finally having local control to control green crabs. That would be a goal. So thank you. And our next speaker is Steve Rumwell. And I'll stop sharing. Let's see. Did I stop sharing? Oh, I guess I must have.
All right, thanks so much, Sylvia, much appreciated. I want to thank Christine for the opportunity to speak, and also just want to express my deep and sincere appreciation to Sylvia Yamada for her outstanding leadership on this issue here in Oregon and throughout the Northwest for over all these years. So again, thanks to the Oregon Invasive Species Council for this opportunity to follow up and present information. So for the record, my name is Steve Rumrill, and I'm the leader of the Shellfish Program for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, which is part of the Marine Resources Program. So here, for my part of this, I just want to speak briefly about management of European green crab in Oregon. Here in Oregon, green crab are officially designated as controlled crustaceans. So you remember Rick Boatner maintains our wildlife integrity program that designates species as controlled or prohibited, and green crab have a designation here as controlled crustaceans. So that designation means that green crab can be harvested recreationally in our state, but once they're harvested, they must be taken out, unlawful to return them to state waters. And it's also, that designation makes it unlawful to take green crab for commercial purposes. I believe this is in contrast, and we can check in with Chelsea, who's here, but I think that they are designated, green crab are designated as a prohibited species in Washington. So I just wanted to note at the bottom, recreational crabbers here in Oregon must keep all of the green crab that occur in recreational pots, regardless of size and regardless of gender. That's a difference in the way that recreational commercial fisheries of crab are handled generally. So I wanted to just make sure that the council is aware that I'm taking the issue regarding green crab to the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission at the end of next week. I have an appearance before them on March 18th. And what we're asking, or our analysis there, so the existing ODFW rules allow for the take of 10 green crab per person per day now, but there's quite a bit of interest with the growing population, as Sylvia described, quite a bit of interest in the public to allow for an increased rate of take. And we all agree amongst ourselves, Sylvia, Sean, myself, almost, everybody, that recreational take alone is insufficient to control this growing population. But nevertheless, there's opportunity for greater take. So our recommendation going before the Fish and Wildlife Commission here next week is to increase the recreational daily catch limit for green crab up to 35 crab per person per day. I'm recommending that we retain our existing limitation on no more than 3 pieces of gear, traps or snares that would apply to all crab, including green crab. And keep in mind as well that our recommended limit of 35 per person per day is exactly the same as California's established right now at 35 crab per person per day. So one of the issues, of course, as Sylvia pointed out, the green crab are a smaller, mid-sized crab. They inhabit the bays and estuaries, generally in the mid-region of the bays and estuaries. They can be highly variable in terms of their coloration, greens and reds and blues and browns. And we here within the ODFW program are concerned about the high likelihood for misidentification of green crab with our native crab. The native crab, red rock crab or Dungeness crab, or some of our other smaller shore crabs like Hemigrapsis, Pachygrapsis, they can be concerned. And we're concerned about an overzealous recreational public harvesting and doing some damage to our species of native crabs. Now, Christine let me know that the Invasive Species Council here in Oregon is specifically interested in the issue about harmful algal blooms and the marine biotoxins produced by harmful algal blooms getting into the tissue of green crab. So just a quick reminder here in Oregon, we have several different types of marine biotoxins associated with different types of harmful algal blooms. Harmful algal blooms is a general statement or a descriptor for all kinds of marine algae. And here I'm using it in a restricted manner to just talk about the microscopic phytoplankton blooms. So we have paralytic shellfish poisoning as one type, amnesic shellfish poisoning, diarrhea shellfish poisoning, all produced by different types of harmful algal blooms. Paralytic shellfish poisoning produced by dinoflagellates, producing a saxitoxin, which is a neurotoxin. Amnesic shellfish poisoning, which is much more widely understood by the general public. Responsible HAB is a diatom, pseudonychia, which produces under certain conditions domoic acid, again, a different type of neurotoxin. And the diuretic shellfish poisoning produced by a dinoflagellate, producing yet another type of toxin. These are, of course, a concern. These harmful algal blooms and the marine biotoxins are of concern to us due to seafood safety issues. So harmful algal blooms can produce these toxins that can build up in the tissue of Dungeness crab on the left, or into the tissue of razor clams, very popular items for human consumption along the coast. And as shown in yellow, we're of course concerned because cooking doesn't destroy those marine biotoxins. But I want to point out here that we do have an active and effective monitoring program in the state. ODFW, my program, monitors the harmful algal blooms, literally the species of microscopic phytoplankton in the communities sampled in the surf zone of marine waters. We do that on a biweekly basis up and down the coast. This is our state's early warning system to let us know when harmful algal blooms and the communities of phytoplankton are present in the water, their condition of the cells, and that's part of our early warning system to let us know when HABs are a concern. Now, in contrast to ODFW, the State of Oregon Department of Agriculture Food Safety Program, that's the agency that does the routine testing specifically for domoic acid in shellfish tissue. And they routinely test Dungeness crab in ocean waters. They routinely test razor clams along the sandy beaches, and also mussels harvested and tested, sampled from the rocky shores. So that's good. And we're in a good situation where that is routinely done to ensure seafood safety. But I have to point out in that bottom box that there's no routine testing by the Department of Agriculture for these bay shellfish, including Dungeness crab or red rock crab, green crab, the diverse array of different kinds of bay clams, or soft shell clams. So it's just keep in mind, we don't do routine testing here in Oregon inside the bays and estuaries. We monitor extensively the marine waters in the nearshore, offshore, along the sandy beaches, rocky shores, but we don't do that testing up inside the bays and estuaries. So I wanted to point out as well, as Robin did, that we've had a history of planning for not only aquatic nuisance species in Oregon, but also early planning in response to the initial phases of the invasion of the West Coast by green crab. Ted Grossholtz and Greg Ruiz back in 2002 put together the management plan for European green crab, submitted that to the U.S. Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. That plan included the evaluation of feasibility and management options for prevention, eradication, and control over the initial stages, the decade, in our case 2003 to 2015, of the invasion along the West Coast here. That plan included activities to coordinate scientists and agencies and to develop a plan for information sharing and data management. And they also described a phased implementation plan with the timelines and cost estimates for the priority tasks. In my perspective and the perspective of many of us along the coast, that plan was effective for the early phases of European green crab spread up along the Oregon coast. But like Robin described for the Aquatic Nuisance Species Plan, an update of the regional management plan for European green crab is sorely needed, urgently needed. And a work group has been established, and we're getting started on this, and our initial meetings are in April. So the update of that plan is underway. Likewise, another important plan The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in 2008 put together a plan to describe the ecological and economic impacts and also invasion management strategies for green crab. The chapters there, a diverse array of chapters focusing in on ecology and dispersal, the overview of ecological impacts known at that time, modeling of the economic impacts to shellfish, both commercial and recreational, characterization of damages, as Sylvia pointed out, to ecologically valuable eelgrass bed, and also to describe the invasion management strategies. So that included, of course, prevention, detection, forecasting, eradication, control, and mitigation strategies there. The conclusions from these estimates is that total losses at that time in 2008 were estimated on the scale of $19 to $23 million per year of damages just to the commercial and recreational shellfish and eelgrass. So recognizing early on that this is potentially very damaging. Well, what do we need here in Oregon? I think that we need to move forward with a risk assessment for the arrival and growth and emergence of European green crab. We should put that together for this period of 2022 to 2035. And so putting together a management strategy here for European green crab in Oregon should start with that risk assessment document that we haven't completed. Prevention and containment has already passed us by. That initial phase from 1997 to the repeated recruitments that Sylvia described, really starting in 2015, 2016, that phase of this nascent population growing into more established has passed us by. We're in that mode of monitoring, detection, and forecasting doesn't look good. As Sylvia's pointed out, when we get recruitment pulses with episodic warm ocean water events, El Niños, or persistent marine heat waves, then we get good recruitment. And the lifespan of the crabs is 5 to 6 years individually. So when those string together, we're now starting to see more continuous recruitment. Our management plan here in Oregon should focus in on monitoring, detection, and forecasting, but also really move into the eradication options and control. We're behind the state of Washington, as Sylvia's described, in terms of their larger scale ramping up of site-specific eradication events. And our population numbers are creeping up there to that point where certainly could be called for. We also need to think about and make planning for the mitigation of impacts, but we don't know at this point how serious they are. We have the potential that they could be high, but yet I'm in pretty close touch with the commercial mariculture industry in the state. I have not yet heard from them to articulate their direct concerns about European green crab depredation events harming their shellfish crops, their commercial crops yet. We also need to think, of course, about education, awareness, and outreach efforts to make sure that the public that is out engaged, seeing, encountering European green crab have the ability, the technical knowledge to recognize how they are different from our native species. And we have quite a diversity of native species. And then finally, we need to also continue to engage and invest in ongoing scientific research, not only to forecast and make use of our monitoring numbers, but also to look at the effectiveness and ways to improve eradication and control efforts. So once again, I'd like to just encourage us to think about the different strategies for control of European green crab. When the population is small, of course, and we can, without normal recruitment, we can think about these eradication events. But here it looks like in the second phase, we have a population that has now established recruitment, and we need to think more about control and containment, and then move ahead into mitigation if we can't really reduce this population. This is a big problem, and the regional population extending all along the West Coast from its initial establishment in San Francisco Bay back in 1989, you saw on that how quickly they established themselves within a decade, all the way up and down the Northern California coast, all along the coast of Oregon, outer coast of Washington, and into British Columbia, all very quickly within a decade. And so it takes a regional approach here to exercise control. Hats off to our colleagues up in Washington, moving ahead with site-specific eradication efforts, and to really engage in a regional approach to management. And I just have to say we're engaged participating in that, but you know, concern as we move from the initial colonization to larger scale efforts. So my specific recommendation at this time is that the Oregon Invasive Species Council think about support for a risk assessment of European green crab in Oregon's waters. What would that risk assessment look like? It would include information up to date from the whole history from 1989 and here in Oregon 1997 forward about the history, the threats, and ecological impacts from this species. The risk assessment for Oregon itself then would look at various vectors and ways that the invasion is perpetuating itself, and categorize those high, medium, low risk. We'd continue with our monitoring, our great monitoring that's been going on, and develop up an opportunity for citizen scientists to contribute more information to us, to consider the various types of control actions that may be appropriate for our bays and estuaries that are different from the semi-contained situation that Sylvia described for the sea pond and Dungeness Spit, but more along the lines for an open estuary like Grays Harbor or Willapa Bay up north. And then to also articulate our research gaps, what's known and unknown, and how we could support the research that's needed, and also evaluate the effectiveness of various different control strategies. And then finally, to articulate our commitment and participation in regional coordination and management. So once again, I just want to leave us with that message that I believe it's urgent that we put together a risk assessment required for this new phase of the European green crab invasion along the Oregon coast. So with that, I think I want to just pass this back over and open it up for questions and discussion. And thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts and perspectives here.
Thank you, Steve and Sylvia, both. What a fascinating presentation. I learned a ton there. So thank you both so much for bringing that to the table. Let's see if we can get everybody's faces a little bigger here. Do we want to stop a screen share there? And
yeah, so I think I want to stop share. Let's see, I'm not sure how to do that. Leave meeting, I don't want to do that. Stop sharing, there we go, okay.
All right, now we're back. Yeah, thanks again. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I'll go through the chat here too, but maybe someone can get started. Either a hand up or just speak up. Go ahead, Sam.
Steve and Sylvia, thank you so much for your research and also for moving forward for on getting the public to be engaged with the green crab situation. I have several questions in terms of preparing the public for this change in the rules in terms of capturing green crab and whether or not we can possess it. So do we actually have an outreach plan now in terms of publicizing to the public why this program is in existence, and also providing some really clear different avenues outreach on proper identification, why it's important to properly identify it, and then also how does a crabber, recreational crabber, ultimately dispose of this crab if they don't eat it? How do you actually kill a crab properly? How do you dispose of it? Because you certainly don't want people taking these crabs and killing them, inhumanely, because that in itself could end up with a whole set of other consequences. But at the same time, we also want to be able to get the public to become aware of this species and to do the right things. That's what we think are good management practices.
Yes, thank you, Sam. I'll do what I can to answer several of those questions. So the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Resources Program is certainly concerned about the education outreach aspects. And we have in development, we've had information on our websites and in our brochures and such and in our presentations in the past, but we're ramping that up in terms of putting together a coherent, integrated strategy for outreach to deal with this rule change coming up here as well. So the concern, of course, that the primary one that we have at this point is to present the opportunity that the rules have changed. It's a little premature because the commission may tell me no next week. So we're just proposing to up the number to 35, but the Fish and Wildlife Commission has that authority to tell me to go back to the drawing board or to change it or do something else. But anyways, that's the proposal. The public perception issue and public knowledge and awareness about the diversity of crab. You know, we want to have the literacy level of our crabbers be at that high enough level that they can recognize the diversity of crab and recognize when they do have a green crab. The distinguishing features, of course, are, you know, 5 spines to the right, 5 to the left, and the 3 bumps in the middle. And that fits together, easy to remember, 3, 5, and 35. And so that's part of the campaign here in California and Oregon, just to make it simple. And if we had made that 37 the limit, or 32 or 35, it would have been confusing. So we're keeping that going there. The issue about how to properly euthanize or kill a green crab is difficult. And with respect to, you know, the inherent rights of invertebrates and shellfish, we do, you know, regularly have deaths of crab by just by, you know, cutting them in half. And that's the way that works here. The proper way, of course, is to freeze them, slow their metabolism down to kill them that way. And I believe, we can check with Chelsea, but I think that that's the way that the large-scale eradication events are following that type of protocol in Washington. But for recreational crabbers in Washington, Oregon, California, British Columbia, we do not have rules and regulations for ethical killing of crabs. We do, you know, talk about that, and but at this point there are no regulations along those lines.
How about this? How about disposal after the crab is caught and euthanized?
Yes, so we're going to provide, as we have had, our previous instructions were, if you catch a green crab, please bring it to one of the ODFW field offices. And we took that opportunity for information gathering. But the numbers have become so high that, you know, yet another green crab brought into Coos Bay or Charleston ODFW office does little to increase the information. Sylvia's smiling there because we did that for a long time, but at this point, we're just saying, you know, please do not remove it. The rules say don't place it back in waters, but if you've caught it, it's yours. Don't put it back in water. Those are the same rules that we have for razor clams. So razor clams, the first 15 that you catch, those are yours regardless of size, if you broke it or not. But we don't have any regulations about how to dispatch and kill a razor clam.
I have a question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
What if somebody goes crabbing and they get 40 green crabs? They
Yes,
can keep 35 and return 5?
Well, that's a problem. So right now in our prohibited species, we don't want to, you know, can't put them back. So I'm working with the Oregon State Police on that situation. We were hoping for at least this year that level is high enough that we won't encounter that problem, which is, you know, could occur, that Sylvia's raised. The number, Sylvia, that you've showed us, the average number per trap right now at the highest for Coos Bay is 6 per trap. So 3 of those traps should give us about 20, perhaps 25. We have a little leeway, but we're well know that sometimes you can get over 35 per single trap. Now that's also placing those traps in prime locations, which is not generally where recreational crabbers go for crabbing. Good question though, Sylvia. Yeah, we're thinking about that.
Chelsea answered in the chat, Washington is freezing, it looks like on their mass eradication events. You know, I wonder, Steve, or maybe Rick too could chime in here. Is there talks, or are there any opportunities for some sort of, you know, like a collection station at docks or something similar to like what they sometimes do with different fish, or like bird wing collections where I don't know how you'd get to the humane treatment and euthanization with a setup like that, but is there talks about a, you know, some sort of station where folks could turn in their crabs when they bring their boat in from the bay, or whatever the case may be?
Yes, we've had, I don't remember who was involved in it, but we've had initial discussion about that. You know, how could we provide a ethical freezing station at a dock? If you don't want green crab, please place them here, and it would have, you know, periodic dry ice in there that would bring them down. Certainly, that kind of thing could be put together. The questions really are about you know, funding and dollars allocated to put that type of stuff together and maintain it. You know, again, hats off to Washington for moving ahead with, you know, serious dollars. Sylvia showed you, you know, allocation out in the $8 million to address this immediate problem in parts of Washington, and greater numbers, of course, of dollars will be needed to address it statewide. We haven't articulated that need at that level to the state of emergency here yet in Oregon. So we don't have dedicated funding to move ahead with any of those kind of good suggestions, Troy, that you're talking about there.
You know, Steve, perhaps the Oregon Invasive Species Council can be the coordinating point to help organize a outreach plan that, you know, would involves looking into tasking what some of the needs are in terms of costs, including costs as well as outreach materials. Because I think we have that plan in place, we'd probably be in much better shape.
Yes, and I think
maybe that can be an ask. I don't know how, you know, who we would ask. I don't know, Rick and or through the governor's office, but if we have a plan, I think it's easier to fund it.
Yes, and that's again what I'm calling for, is that risk assessment plan to really put that together.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to work with you on it through the council, maybe through the OISC's Education Outreach Committee.
Yeah, and I think we should be looking at Sea Grant fellows and things like that that can help move that as well. I know Kat is only on a phone, and I know she has been working with students that have been looking at eelgrass impacts, and I didn't know whether she had any comments about that. I put that in the chat.
I don't see if, can Kat respond to that? If not, I can comment on that.
Great, Steve.
Yeah, I don't see Kat on the screen at the moment, so.
I'll just raise it up. So Dr. Kat De Rivera was the major professor for a graduate student, Kim Brown, who recently completed her master's thesis at Portland State University, specifically looking at the ecological interactions between European green crab and eelgrass. And she produced some very interesting results showing that, of course, we can have some impacts to eelgrass, supporting that point that Dr. Yamada made earlier, that that green crab, their bioturbation as they search for food, can disturb eelgrass beds and cause some ecological problems to that very valuable submerged aquatic vegetation. We are seeing in Oregon some areas where eelgrass has diminished and disappeared mysteriously, and down in Coos Bay in the South Slough Reserve, and some bioturbation by green crab could be partially responsible or wholly responsible for that. So that's a concern, and we put a high premium on eelgrass beds and afford them protection to the level of a habitat area of particular concern at the federal level, protected by no net loss regulations at the state level. So major concerns there. So we may be seeing some impacts from European green crab already here in Oregon estuaries. But once again, more definitive research to 100% nail that down is needed here in Oregon. I think Kat would support everything I just said there.
We're going to play it back to her, Steve, and make sure.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? I want to respect Steve and Sylvia's time here today.
If I can raise up, Rick Boatner just posted that the Chinese mitten crab was, initially a major concern for us here in Oregon. And Rick can correct me, but I think that we placed that on the prohibited species list. But Rick was pointing out that despite those initial, good intended concerns, the mitten crab never became the problem here in the estuarine waters as it did in San Francisco Bay. So, not all areas of the coast respond the same. That point you were going to make there, Rick? Good point.
Yep, no, you got it.
For unexplained reasons, the population of the mitten crab in the San Francisco Bays is almost non-existent now. So
yeah,
it crashed. Last question I have, Steve, is there any chance that is there anything that prevents us from using the word green crab instead of European green crab?
Gosh, I don't know, Sylvia, on the conventions of international taxonomy, would we go through a major problem in terms of, dropping that term European from there? Good point.
We have a lot of crabs that are green, though. If you just call it green crab, a lot of people would, think, oh, okay, Hemigrapsis oregonensis is green, and the helmet crab is green, and so on.
Yeah.
You want to protect the native crabs. So I think European is a good term because it designates the fact that they don't originate from here.
But the problem is that many of our population,
I don't think it's derogatory.
I think many of our population not even from Europe anymore. See,
yeah,
and that's the thing. It doesn't identify. Well, I think it's a separate debate, but I mean, there are many names that could be used, but I think us in state or federal agencies should at least consider us thinking about using names that don't necessarily have these identifiers, because it's so inconsistent in terms of how we name. Why is it the European green crab? There's no reason for it. Why isn't the green shore crab or the five pointed crabs? It's 5-point crab. Something that really helps with the identification be much stronger than if we continue using a name that that may not really help its ID, because you can't tell it's European, although you can put a stigma that, oh, it's European, therefore it's not good. It's just something for us to think about as professionals.
Yeah, interesting discussion.
Well, so it sounds like there's a lot to do here, right? And a lot of it falls outside of the scope of what the council is able to do, but a lot of it falls within the scope of what we do as well. And some of that, those action items that do fall outside may ultimately be informed by some of the tasks that take place inside, of the scope of what the council can do. And so to whatever extent that council members are willing and able to engage, whether it's with Rick or Steve or Sylvia or some combination of the three, I strongly encourage it. Sam, if you're gonna if you're going to reach out, Christine, I know you stay in the loop on this. Yeah, I'd love to get continual updates on the progress of some of these action items and where it might make sense for the council to plug in as we move forward. I think we'll make sure to carve out some time on our June agenda down in Coos Bay to cover this subject as well. We'll be kind of right there in the heart of it. So
yeah, and one thought is that, if you can begin to attach costs to some of these, to putting this risk assessment together, Steve, I don't know whether that kind of thing we can work. We can certainly work with the legislative committee and we just want to keep in the loop. But I think you have the expertise. You need to come up with a funding concept or what it's going to take to get more more ability to meet these challenges. Everybody's pushed heavily, and I think Rick had a comment.
I was just saying, Kat's group has been a great one doing risk assessments for the Division 56 rules, so that might be one to consider if Kat group would take this on to do a risk assessment.
you hurry and vote on that while she's not here. Okay, I want to respect your time, Sylvia and Steve. Again, thank you both so much. We will certainly follow up with you probably from multiple angles as time goes on here, but really appreciate you both taking the time to bring that great information and engage with the council. We definitely want to talk more about finding ways that make sense for the council to engage. Clearly an important issue. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you today.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
If anyone comes up with any follow-up questions, shoot them to Patrick or Christine or myself, and we can make sure they get passed on. I think we could probably just share their contact information as well with you if you want to follow up with anything there. And we're back to a normal meeting, whereas we're a few minutes behind schedule. So that's a comfortable place to be in. Certainly well worth the extra time, though, for that presentation. The next thing on the agenda is to talk a little bit about June meeting planning. We're looking into the second week of June, either the 14th or 15th, 15th or 16th. Definitely be looking for some input from council members on what's going to work best for them for travel. Looking at the Coos Bay area, more specifically the Coos Bay campus of Southwestern Oregon Community College is kind of right in between Coos Bay and North Bend and Charleston, kind of in the middle of that triangle right there. So it's a great central location to be right in the mix of some of the things that are going on the South Coast. So Christine, I don't know if you want to add anything to this discussion, or we can open it up to some, just some open discussion about this meeting and what folks want to see or hear.
Well, I think we had a tentative list of some folks that wanted to help plan on this, and Troy and I were sort of just pedal to the metal to get this meeting organized. And so we do have the facility and the SWAT camp, the leadership at the campus is very excited to have us there. They have very good capabilities to do a hybrid meeting that might be, it's probably going to be something that will be what we'll try, but we do want to have, we want to have some field trips. Certainly the Sudden Oak death is always something that's going to be on the agenda, I would imagine, and some green crab. Maybe there's some other topics. So I think we could have an open call at this point, Troy, for potential topics for a field trip or something like that. It's been so long since we've been meeting in person. It's sort of like scratch your head. It's like, how did we do this? And so even to think of the structure, but the good thing is that campus is fairly open to us that week. They have a brand new science building that's really a very welcoming and easy place to conduct meetings. And so they pretty much said, you name what you need, and we have the facilities to make it happen. So that part is good. The rest of it, though, is still in flux, right? So
yeah, and we talked about spreading it over 2 days, but certainly not 2 big long days. Probably more like 2 half-plus days, where one day was really centered around some field visits and conversations with local partners, and maybe a short debrief session after that for some brainstorming and conversations. And then the other day, whether it's first or second, I don't know that matters at this point, but having more of a traditional meeting, the council meeting itself, and that day may also include one short field visit or something like that, but maybe not either, depending on what folks want to do. So it'd be like two kind of half days, one more oriented towards the field trips and getting able to get some eyes on the ground and what's going on and talk to the local partners. And then the second one to continue those conversations, but to in the context of a more general council meeting. So
we were also going to try to reach out to our legislative end of things and maybe engage with the Coastal Caucus on anything that would be relevant to those issues that they need to be informed on. We have a number of sort of new members of that caucus that would benefit from that.
So yeah, this would be a time for anybody with suggestions or concerns or pertinent topics that they'd want to see covered at that June meeting. It's also another time to, if you have not already expressed interest at the January meeting of helping out with that planning team, you could do that now. We do have a couple folks who have already expressed their willingness to help with that, so appreciate that.
One potential idea, oh, sorry, Karen, go ahead. Say your name.
Well, it's already come up. I can certainly alert Sarah Navarro, and Wyatt can alert others that are involved with sudden oak death that we'd like to hear from them, because that's such an important issue down there. It's also an area with Port Orford cedar, which is quite a success story in terms of containment and developing resistant trees. So that might be another topic.
And another topic that comes to mind is the Gorse Action Group has been doing a bunch of work on gorse in the Bandon area and have a demonstration area for different control measures that might be a possible site visit. It's on the way to a sudden oak death if you're starting in Coos Bay.
It is in the edge of the county, though. Yeah, but we were just deference to our legislative member that definitely cares about that a lot. So I mean, it could be sort of a group or something like that. But so Noel, are you volunteering to help on this, or?
I could help connect people. I have not been a big part of the Gorse Action Group, but I know people who are, so I can help make those connections.
Yeah, we have the watershed councils are fairly involved in that as well. So there's some good contacts there.
Yeah. And the Curry Soil and Water Conservation District is doing a lot of work for Oregon State Parks on gorse and is very involved in the Gorse Action Group. Some other ideas might be mat grass. There's a lot of mat grass around the Bandon area and at Flores Lake at Blacklock Point. That could be another one that kind of flies under the radar. People don't recognize that one generally, but it's a real problematic weed. And Bitty Bitty, we could host an event on that at Oregon State Parks along with this.
Thank you, Noel. Steve, I don't know if you in the chat there, but Kat had sent a reply over there. You did a great job on summarizing the committee work, and that she'd be happy to help with a green crab plan with some extra information there too. So thanks for jumping in there, Kat.
Yes, I'm happy to work with Kat as a talented, innovative scientist and friend to Oregon. I'm happy to work with her.
Well, that'd be great. So yeah, just circling back here. I mean, it sounds like sudden oak death is gonna always be a topic when we get down in that part of the state, and I think that's great. I think it facilitates probably a site visit to the port or something of that nature, which might then dovetail into some other concerns. I think this green crab subject is worth continuing. I'm not sure if or how that could be tied to any kind of field visit. It'd be interesting to see how the tides are going to shake out while we're down there, and that may inform what time and what places we go visit.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead, Christine.
Well, I was just going to say, when we met there last, which was about 4 years ago, I can't even remember when it was. we had a trap set really close because we met at the OIMB campus, but there certainly could be a demonstration very easily for that. But it sounds like Steve is not going to be available, but Kat will be available, and maybe we can have some off time to talk about that. Certainly the folks at South Slough are readily available.
Yes, Sean Schooler, who is not able to join us today, is based down there, and he's an expert on green crab. He wanted to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't. But that's his home turf, as you know.
Just so you know, that week looks really good for minus tides. The 14th as a -2, the 15th as a -2.4. So those are some super low tides, but they're in the morning, bright and early.
All right, the Coos Bay Clam Derby will commence at 5 a.m. on June 14th. Thanks, Noel. And I think, we're certainly not a Coos County only. It makes sense to cover some items that are really relevant right there, and there's plenty of them. But if anybody else sees opportunities like Noel pointed out with the Gorse Action Group or any other groups that are in that vicinity, certainly want to give them a forum if they need one, and would love to hear from them. So
in our primer for the Oregon coast, it European green crab, sudden oak death, gorse, and the OSHV1 virus. Is that, I don't know much about it. I don't know anything about it, but it's about shellfish stuff too. So
Right. That the virus has still not been detected. It's a prevention in terms of the shellfish growers, but it is really, really scary. So that's why we put it on that.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, if I can add just a point there. So last month, our program took the recommendation forward to Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission regarding this specific variant of the oyster herpes virus. Our program does maintain and operate the shellfish biosecurity transport permitting. So basically, we permit shellfish from California to be brought into Oregon, or Washington to be brought into Oregon, or shellfish products originating in Oregon to be shipped out to Hawaii or shipped out to Washington or Oregon. And as Christine pointed out quickly, that oyster herpes virus microvariant 1 was detected in San Diego, and that raised huge concern amongst the commercial mariculture shellfish operators in the state. And we quickly adopted the policy alignment with the state of Washington and banned any imports from California into Oregon, just on our allowance there. And then last month, we took that forward to the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission, which they approved, to give us the authority to increase biosecurity and not only manage, as we do now, interstate transport, but also intrastate. So I now have the authority, if we had an outbreak or some concern of pathogens, pests, et cetera, in Coos Bay, for example, I could deny then those transports into Tillamook Bay or into Netarts Bay. So we have that ability now, gained that authority just last month. Thanks for raising that up. That's an important issue.
That's great news. And Karen, I like how you're referring back to the primer there. It seems like, especially with that recent news, there's a good opportunity for us to just wrap all those items right out of the primer into this meeting. Especially with the considerations of inviting some local policymakers to come and attend, county commissioners and such. I think it makes a lot of sense to try to follow that format. Steve, it sounds like you're not going to be available, but maybe we can follow up and connect where we can tie together a couple different topics and make a visit to the port or something like that, and learn about some of the concerns and what's being done, and maybe get ideas on how the council can continue to support those efforts.
one more thing. I don't know if we could reach it, but, and I don't really know what's going on in terms of the Port of Coos Bay in terms of logs, but I think it's interesting sometimes to look at what are the constraints that are being put on our North American logs by some of the destinations like China or Japan, and to hear what the local producers do and comply with to protect those forest systems in other continents, I think is really interesting. Yeah. And so I'm not sure with whom to follow up on that, but I could investigate it if people thought that'd be interesting. There are a lot of hurdles put on log exporters now.
I think that'd be great, Karen. You think about the burden from a private industry standpoint of doing all the things you have to do to remain compliant for all sorts of different reasons, to do prevention and mitigation, to protect us here domestically, but then a whole laundry list, I'm sure, of similar requirements and restrictions that folks are taking on to protect other countries just in order to get their product to market. So yeah, if you want to dig into that a little bit and see if anybody could speak to that or get us some more referrals, I think that really fits in nicely with the theme of kind of what's going on down there, especially at the port. So Christine and I will have a weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, but very regular meeting with Patrick very soon, similar to the meetings that Rick and I used to have with Jolene, to kind of keep meeting plannings and priorities going. So we'll reach out to those of you who have expressed interest in helping get this meeting planned and follow up with you on some of these ideas you've brought up and connections maybe that you can help us make, and go from there. I don't know if we'll do a poll or of some sort to lock in the dates. Like we said, 14th or 15th, or 15th or 16th is kind of the 2 days we're looking at. I think that's either a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm not sure what works best for everybody at this point, but try to lock that down with you soon, so you can adjust your calendars and schedules. We've got some great stuff coming in off the chat. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Beth. Yeah, that'd be great, hearing about Spartina and kind of the progression and control of that effort and how that's going. That'd be great. Thank you. And unless anybody's got anything else on the meeting, we'll kind of move that to follow-up status, and we can move back into some roundtable updates. It is 3:59. We've still got some time here in the meeting. Public comment scheduled for 4:10. But if we want to continue on with some roundtable updates, we can open the floor for that now. I can give a quick update from Western Invasives Network. I work really closely in that capacity with Justin Bush from the Washington Invasive Species Council, kind of residual of my association with North Coast Partners and the Columbia Gorge CWMA. The Washington Council was given some money through the USDA APHIS PPQ program just a few months ago, 2 months ago or so. And part of that money is going towards a project that Justin and I are planning for 2023. If you're familiar with the Columbia Gorges ICEP program, which recently got over just a couple days ago, last week, it's an invasive species and exotic pest workshop that the CWMA does every year. This year they had over 400 registrants to the event. It was virtual once again. We are planning a coastal version of that in 2023. And so I think it'll be a good opportunity to bring forward some of the information that comes out over the next 8 to 10 months as we look into green crab at the Washington and Oregon level, as we continue to monitor the zebra mussel response. We'll look to do that in person, probably in Astoria, maybe in Ilwaco. We're fighting over which side of the bridge we're going to put it on. I'm pulling for Astoria, but Ilwaco's not a bad place either. So certainly be looking to engage with members of the council on that coastal invasive species and exotic pest workshop as we get further into the planning phases of that. So I appreciate Justin putting in the time and the work to help get that funding and thinking about Oregon as he did it, so that we can partner and make a regional impact. So. Nobody else jumping with Rick? You got your station staffed up yet?
Nope, just finished interviews last week, so doing reference checks this week. So we're moving forward with the stations, planning to open the first week of May. So that's all I have been doing for the last month.
Yeah. We have an opportunity to get back on time here and maybe even close early. So give a kind of a last call for anybody who wants to do an update. And then we'll open this up for any public comment.
Hey Troy, I'll throw in a anecdote real quick if we've got a minute.
We do. Go ahead, Josh.
I think it was our last meeting that I talked a little bit about a sort of planned increase in shipping traffic to the Columbia to sort of make up for the big backlog that's been happening down in Los Angeles ever since COVID started, basically. So we have had just the slightest uptick, which Sam asked me if it was noticeable, and the answer is not really. It's all sort of within our interannual variation, but there was a small uptick in the last couple of months. What's interesting is at this very moment, by some accounts, the largest container ship that's ever been in the Columbia just arrived yesterday. Sitting in Portland right now, it's about 200 feet longer than the typical ones and holds 2,000 more containers than the usual ones do. So that's kind of fun. For my program's purposes, the container ships don't really ballast at all. So I'm a little bit curious if Customs and Border Patrol might be taking a look at that one, but we won't be. That's just the sort of hottest news of the last 24 hours. I thought I'd mention it. It's pretty interesting.
I didn't realize that was the biggest ship to come in yet. We don't do a lot of inspections on the container ships because they move in and out fairly quickly. And they're kind of dangerous to inspect with the movement of the containers. However, we might drive past that one, take a peek from the shoreline and see what we can see. We do look at the containers coming off the vessel. We do mostly an electronic check on the manifests of the containers coming in to see if there's any items that might be bringing cargo of concern that could be carrying hitchhikers or, you know, need appropriate documentation, that kind of stuff. But I have not been doing a huge amount of that targeting for the past couple weeks. One of my other colleagues has been doing that. But I did smile a bit when you said the uptick was barely noticeable, because I'm like, we're noticing it a lot. From the aspect of you know, seeing what's in all those containers, we're like, wow, this is the most container traffic we've had in years. So it's been keeping us a bit busy.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that anyone who's local go take a look, because it's not every day you get to see a ship that's 1,100 feet long and has 8,000 containers on it.
Absolutely.
If you got that kind of time in your hands, go for it. It's pretty cool.
Is that at
We
Terminal
will
6?
drive past it tomorrow.
It is
Is it at Terminal 6?
Yep.
And
It's,
Nick, how about the spongy moth? Are you seeing any egg masses? Or is it still too early?
It's too early for the 2022 season. We won't start looking for current infestations, recent infestations, until June. Mid-June is when we really start looking for new egg masses. We do check all year long. We are still looking at ships that have been in high-risk ports from last year. But you know, at this point, most of the ships coming in and out have already been inspected, either here at other ports. So it's kind of a quiet time for us right now with that.
Thank you.
For anybody who can't make it to Terminal 6, if you have social media or even just Google, the ship is called the Navios Unite. I'm sure there's some inflection somewhere in that name that I'm not getting, but it is called the Navios Unite. I saw some pictures on it yesterday, miles in the background in Astoria, and even as so, it was much larger than the large buildings that were in the very immediate foreground. It is impressive vessel. And if you've been waiting for something that you ordered for 6 or 7 months, I hope it is on that ship and you get it soon. You know, the supply chain's been wild out there. Hopefully shipments like this will help people get back to normal, but impressive to look at nonetheless.
I'll make one short update for those of you that might not be in the wheelhouse of offshore wind. It's the marine infrastructure that is being proposed to develop offshore wind is also targeting the Coos Bay estuary. And also there are many concerns, I know on the Western Regional Panel, we were worried about marine infrastructure, biofouling, all kinds of issues like that. So this is going to be an emerging area of concern. And BOEM is already, I guess, face-to-face with the Pacific Fishery Management Council in the way that they're approaching the leasing. So just beware, there's some giant conflicts emerging in terms of risks and benefits from that development. So.
Thank you, Christine. One last quick update on some council business. We do have a nomination for our Eastern Oregon seat. And so I know Patrick will be working through that. And ex officio members look to receive some communication regarding that nomination and subsequent confirmation or not. And hopefully we can get that seat filled here rather quickly. The only item that we didn't get to off the action items from last January, I want to thank everybody who got into action and got that list knocked out because it was pretty stout. The only thing we really haven't done was getting the hub, or excuse me, getting the primer relaunched. But you know, this meeting planning was taking some precedent over some of those efforts. There's still some transitional stuff going on. I know Jolene's been working with Patrick, and certainly appreciate both of them for putting that time in to get some of the transitional stuff finished. But we'll look at mounting a strategy for that re-release and really pushing that throughout the weeks and months leading up to our June in-person meeting. So are you waving, Patrick? Are you
on that note, for the June meeting, I just put in the chat a meeting poll for June, either starting, it didn't let me do it exactly how I wanted it, but starting Tuesday afternoon, going into Wednesday morning, or starting Wednesday afternoon, going into Thursday morning. So if you use that link to select one or both options that work for you, then we can tally up the votes and pick something.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and open it up for a few minutes for any public comment. I think I know how this will go, but we will open it up for any public comment, members of the public or somebody that wants to comment as a member of the public. Okay, well, that went about how I thought it might. And that brings us to the end. To recap on some of the stuff we went over today, the hub has been published, and Patrick's working on a outreach, kind of a launch messaging to get that out to the public. We'll make sure that includes some social media snippets and captions as well. Plenty of engagement that can happen on the aquatic nuisance species plan revision, of course, as well as with Steve and Sylvia and that whole team. So encourage anybody who has some expertise or perspectives to offer to get involved with that. We'll continue on with the planning of the June meeting and look to finalize items as quick as we can and get an itinerary out to folks. Legislative concept for insurance, we'll submit the final, in big air quotes, the final draft of the proper forms that are required before the end of this week. And then Chris will start putting those through the channels at ODA. I don't know what the follow-up procedures will look like, if any, but we'll continue to chase that down. And with respect to that insurance coverage, we'll work on some sort of a waiver that we can operate on in the meantime and get that circulated to council members and other attendees or invitees. And if we can get that nailed down, we'll try to include that waiver form to any public invitations, that we put out there for folks to come attend the meeting and make sure everyone gets a copy of that. Anybody else have anything to add for the good of the order or corrections to make? Hearing none, we are going to be able to end this meeting 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Appreciate everybody's input, everybody's time today. Again, want to thank Steve and Sylvia. Appreciate y'all being here. And we'll close this meeting and talk to y'all very soon.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.